The story starts like any other, the invasion of the world. One day through an open gate, monsters from another realm poured out, and humanity faced the threat of destruction. At that very moment, connected to the gate and opened, as if by salvation itself, the world of swords and magic. Einhard appeared through the inner energy of the dungeon. Martial arts were wielded the martial arts world Miran. In the land of demons Jahan, a name befitting hell itself emerged. Humanity, once rulers of the earth, could only suffer in such an era of chaos. However, soon individuals awakened, harnessing the system and gaining superhuman powers. These players helped normal humans and tried their best to save them from the chaotic world. After the players saved the humans fleeing from monsters, the humans thanked them, our protagonist. Iron warned them that it was dangerous and they shouldn't go near the gate. He then asked his teammate why those people always started trouble whenever they saw him. One of his teammates replied that it was nothing new for intruders to disregard humans and asked what was so surprising about it. The man added that the dungeon and mana circle were like high-ranking powers. Suddenly they heard someone scream loudly. Burn turned to see a monster attacking a car with people inside. He immediately activated his status window, and the system identified the monster as a three-headed werewolf, an intermediate monster with 110 points. The system also issued an emergency rescue request. Burn called out to his comrades, asking what they were doing and urging them to catch the crazy dog. Without waiting for a response, he rushed toward the monster. One of his teammates shouted for him to wait, but Arun didn't listen. He jumped off the building, deploying his rope dart, piercing it into the building behind him, and swings toward the monster. His teammate shouted in frustration, asking if he was out of his mind, and reminded him that monsters above intermediate rank were supposed to be handled by the Volcano Guild. Arun replied that he knew, but pointed out that it was obvious the guild was struggling. As he neared the monster, he retracted his rope dart and forcefully threw it, successfully piercing the monster's body. This shocked the members of the Volcano Guild. Burn then opens the wings of his rope dart, activating his exclusive skill for the controller, Hidden Class Status Controller. This skill increased his strength by 60, willpower and agility by 30, but reduced his dodge rate by 60, and increased his weight by 300 due to the stat synergy effect. He forcefully dragged the monster, making it scream in pain while the victim and her child screamed in horror. Struggling to maintain his strength, he shakily called out to his teammates, urging them to hurry up and decapitate the monster. One teammate jumped down from the building, shouting at Arun for never listening and activating his tanker attack skill. He slashed his sword forward while yelling that Arun would never survive without him. Arun smiled, thinking how his teammate always protected his back, like a true companion, but just as his teammate swung his sword, he slashed Arun from behind instead of the monster. Shocked, Arun heard his so-called friend angrily call him a fool and tell him to just die already. Arun collapsed, bleeding heavily before falling unconscious. He saw his best friend's face and his teammates smiling at his death, which filled him with fury. As he tries to flee, he recalled the woman he tried to save, stood unmoved, betrayed by everyone he trusted and relied on. He died consumed by rage years later. Burn fell face first into the dirt. A man kicked him repeatedly, shouting for him to move faster and calling him scout. The man mocked him, saying this was what a high-rank, nearly top-tier player looked like. Burn knew he was in Mijian, the monster corpse disposal area of the Volcano Guild, a living hell. 5 years had passed since his fall into this wretched existence. The man pinned Arun's head deeper into the mud, laughing cruelly, struggling to look up through blurred vision. Arun found that his status window was no longer appearing, yet a blue light suddenly shone before him. Shocked, he opened his eyes to see the system displaying a message. He has been chosen as the vessel of chaos, and asked him if he accepted. The system warned him that his choice could lead to the destruction of the world. Smiling bitterly, Arun thought about ending his pain. Without hesitation, he accepted. The system sucked him into a portal, transporting him to an unknown location. There he encountered the legendary rulers of Gehenna. The three kings, what laid before his eyes were legends, forgotten across the three worlds, remembered only as history. The first was the King of Silver, Muang, who conquered the continent with a single fist. The second was the Sword King of Einhard, who split the sky with his sword. Lastly, there was the God Slayer, the King of Gehenna, who killed a god and destroyed divinity. The Demon King, the place Arun now stood in, was the chaotic world, where these three kings were sealed. The Sword King observed Arun's gaze and asked the others why it looked the way it did, questioning if he was truly the vessel of chaos. Mon seemed equally confused and asked why Ern was staring into the distance instead of at them. The Demon King, however, remarked that it was understandable for someone to feel disoriented after being suddenly dragged into such a place. Meanwhile, Ern was staring at the system, which displayed an open gate and told him that if he passed through it, he would become a vessel of chaos. However, it also warned him again that his choice could lead to the world's end. Ern wondered if he could exact revenge on the world that betrayed him and now lived on in peace. Memories of his teammates, his best friend, and the woman he loved flashed through his mind. Resolutely he stood and approached the open gate, thinking that if revenge was possible, he would gladly accept it. The king surrounded him, accusing him of being disrespectful, but he ignored them. He only stopped when one of them asked if he believed he would truly feel relieved by taking revenge in this manner. The Sword King told him that becoming the vessel of chaos was simple. If Iran truly wished for the world's destruction, all he had to do was step through the gate and it would happen. Iran replied that seeing it firsthand made him feel at ease. He truly did hope for the world's destruction. Yet the Sword King reminded him that if the world were destroyed, it wouldn't be Iran enacting revenge, but chaos itself. Muon explained that chaos would consume his body and mind, leaving him as little more than a spectator, receiving only the message that the world had been destroyed. Iran was speechless. The Demon King then asked if that outcome was really enough for him. Was it truly the revenge he wanted? Euron, still angry and broken, asked them what they expected him to do about it. The Demon King ominously responded that Ern must carry out his revenge with his own hands. Whether through beating or tearing, only by personally enacting vengeance could he truly save her. Frustrated, Ern angrily asked how he could even contemplate such a thing, with his broken body, having lost his player powers and being branded a slave. The Sword King bristled at his defiance, demanding that Iran recognize who they were. The kings told him that if he inherited their legacies and trapped chaos within himself, he would not only achieve his revenge, but could even become the ruler of the entire world. Swearing to help him, they urged him to inherit everything from them. To Euron, the purpose behind their insistence that he become their disciple didn't matter. Revenge was all he cared about. He asked if he could call them masters. The Demon King, surprised, quickly agreed. The Sword King, however, remarked that Ern's easy persuasion was unsettling, while Muon laughed awkwardly, saying it was fine thus. Ern became the disciple of the three Qings. In the world of seals where time and death had ceased, Ern underwent endless training. Finally he succeeded in trapping chaos within himself. Ern awoke to someone kicking him from behind. His supervisor was shouting at him, asking if he was seriously sleeping in a dung pit. Dodging the next kick, Ern wondered if time had truly stopped during his training. He grabbed his supervisor's foot and easily threw him, sending the man flying and screaming. As his supervisor slammed into the mud, Ern looked for his status window. As expected, it did not appear. He noticed his body was unchanged, having lost his player powers. Without his master's words, he might have believed the past 100 years of training were nothing but a dream. He recalled Muon's warning when he returned to his world. He would likely lose all the powers inherited from them. Confused, Ern had asked why. The Demon King explained that his powers were far too overwhelming for his world to handle, especially now that chaos resided within him. Ern asked if it meant he had to undergo the same training again. Muon calls him, asking him what he planned to do, and reminding him that his body would need to be remade to contain his powers back in the present. Ern slapped his forehead at the thought of the ordeal ahead. His supervisor, now enraged, charged at him, vowing to kill him. Ern dodged the attack effortlessly, catching the man's fist with his bare hand. His supervisor, Xiao Taemin, who had tormented him for 5 years, struggled in disbelief. Taemin was only level 5, but even with Ern's reset body, he shouldn't have struggled. Ern pushed himself, remembering Muon's words. Even a lowly warrior could overpower someone stronger if they mastered the art of killing intent. Muon added that after all, killing intent is mental strength. Surprising Ern as he began to understand it, Ern stared into Taemin's eyes, channeling his mental strength, which filled Taemin with sheer horror. With a chilling tone and murderous intent, Ern told him that he will tear him apart. The oppressive killing intent caused Taemin to imagine his arm being crushed. As Ern tightened his grip, Taemin screamed in terror, watching his hand twisted. Raising his hand and aiming at Taemin, Ern declared coldly that he will rip him to pieces. With a sharp gesture he launched his hand forward, unleashing a terrifying projection of murderous intent in Taemin's mind. The attack pierced through his body, leaving him screaming in pure fear, causing him to drop to the floor. The commotion drew the attention of the other slaves, Aaron understood that clumsy violence could provoke resistance, but fear true. Bone deep fear was a far more powerful tool. He swore to himself that from now on, whenever Taemin looked into his eyes, he would wet himself in terror. Walking past the other slaves, Aaron knew he had to act quickly before the Volcano Guild's guards discovered him. Reaching for the chain, one of the slaves asked wordly where you think he is going. Aaron ignored the question, snapped the chain effortlessly, and turned his gaze toward the monster corpse disposal area. The pit below was filled with toxic fumes from the rotting monster corpses, fumes so noxious that even the administrators avoided going near them. Yet Aaron knew the true hell lay deep within that place. It was a hell he would willingly descend into, for it was where he would be reborn. Without hesitation he jumped down into the pit, leaving the other slaves stunned and speechless. As he descended, the toxic fumes stung his skin and lungs, but he pressed on, reaching the corpses. He pushed them aside, making his way deeper. Beneath the layers of decaying flesh and bone, he found what he was looking for: the boiling monster blood. This gruesome pool was the perfect training ground for the blood demon technique. He remembered Mu Wang explaining that there were various martial arts and secret techniques such as the volcano's divine technique. Mu Wang had also told him that the blood demon technique he would learn was at least 5 times greater than those techniques, because it was the strongest martial art. Mu Wang had further explained that its principle was simple: stealing what belongs to others and making it his. The target Mu Wang had revealed was blood, which had surprised him at the time. Now he understood that the blood demon technique was a vicious form of dark magic that absorbed the life force embedded in blood to cultivate inner power. However, to use this technique he needed to create a danshin within himself. The danshin, a source of power for the warriors of the Silver World, was similar to the magic core of the players. Yet creating a danshin was said to be impossible for those not from the Silver World. Mu Wang, however, had assured him there was a way, insisting that it didn't matter if it took dozens or even hundreds of deaths. He had simply needed to keep learning and persisting until it worked. Following the transmission method that his 3 masters had devised, over 3,000 years he had endured 1,000 deaths. In the end he succeeded in creating a danshin, and clearly remembered every step of the process. He began the first step, absorbing blood and circulating its energy. The second step was to create the blood danshin. He focused intently, starting to form a blood core inside his body, and activating the blood demon absorption technique. The process caused unbearable pain, unlike anything he had ever experienced. Without question, the pain felt as though it belonged to another world, but he pushed through it, screaming in agony. Throughout the ordeal his cries echoed through the area, catching the attention of the monsters lurking within the volcano. He understood why access to the monster corpse disposal area was prohibited. It wasn't only because of the toxic fumes emitted by the decomposing monster corpses, but also due to the deformed monsters created by the death energy radiating from the bodies. The area was in essence a den of undead creatures. After successfully forming his danshin, an undead goblin crept closer and launched a sharp claw attack from behind. He easily stopped the attack by grabbing its head. Observing the creature, he recognized it as a goblin zombie, and knew that each undead attack carried toxic poison. Furthermore, he understood that these creatures were mortal unless their necks were severed. If he had been in his old body, he would have already fallen prey to them now. However, he effortlessly crushed the goblin's head with his bare hand. He regarded it as pathetic before using the blood demon absorption technique to consume its blood, then slamming its corpse into the ground. As he absorbed the goblin's blood, he felt truly alive for the first time in years. More zombies rushed toward him, but he remained calm, recalling the principles of the realm of crimson blood. In this realm he knew he must absorb his opponent's blood, turning their nutrients and energy into his own. Another benefit of crimson blood came to mind. It collected the residue of blood and iron to create steel balls. He shot a drop of blood at one of the approaching zombies, causing its head to explode on impact. He resolved to devour every last one of the undead without leaving a trace, forming more steel balls. He shot them with precision at the swarm. Each steel ball struck its target's head, which promptly exploded into dust. Dashing into the midst of the swarm, he jumped and grabbed the zombie by its head, crushing it with ease, releasing more steel balls into the air. He easily decimated the zombies, causing another cascade of explosions. Grabbing a nearby zombie by its neck, he released more steel balls, knowing that in the end these creatures were nothing more than prey. With a final burst of steel balls thrown in all directions, he decimated the remaining zombies around him. The undead fell to the ground in lifeless heaps. Standing amidst the corpses, he sighed in relief, looking at his hand. He thought that things weren't going badly so far. As he continued to absorb the zombie's blood, he suddenly sensed a presence behind him. He turned quickly and saw a massive figure swinging its enormous arm at him. He managed to jump away just in time, landing at a safe distance. When he looked closer, he recognized the figure as a zombie troll. Despite the danger, he smiled. This was exactly the level of challenge he had been expecting. The next day, Taemin was crying and shaking in a corner, muttering that he was going to die and begging for someone to save him. Burn's traitorous best friend Kim Shin-hong thought that Taemin had completely broken down. An elite guard approached Shin-hong, addressing him as commander, and reported that he had summoned the other guards who were present during the incident. Shin-hong stepped closer to the guards and ordered them to explain what had happened to Taemin. One of the guards hesitantly reported that Taemin was training a slave who had been dozing off when suddenly the slave grabbed Taemin's hand, and then Taemin became like this. Shin-hong asked if that was all or if there were any other unusual details. The guard stuttered, adding that the slave had glared at Taemin. This detail irritated Shin-hong, as he wondered if it could have been killing intent, though he dismissed the idea as impossible, unless the slave was a martial artist with inner power. Shin-hong then demanded to know the slave's whereabouts, which shocked the guards. The same guard nervously replied that the slave had committed suicide. Skeptical Shin-hong asked where the body was, and the guard explained that the suicide occurred in the corpse disposal area, so the body must have melted away due to the poison there. This explanation enraged Shin-hong. Grabbing the guard by the face, he furiously questioned whether the guard was lying to avoid searching for the body in the toxic disposal area. He reminded the guard why he was stationed there in the first place, to handle situations where incompetent guards were attacked by slaves, and accused them of not caring if trash like them died. Shin-hong continued, adding that he had felt the slave's imprint being destroyed naturally, yet they fabricated the suicide report without even confirming the body. He asked the guard if there was any reason he should let him live. The guard, crying and writhing in pain, stammered an apology, but Shin-hong mercilessly crushed the guard's skull. The other guards stood frozen in shock, unable to move out of fear. Shin-hong turned to them and demanded they choose. Would they end up like the man he had just killed? Or would they go find the slave's body in the disposal area? Terrified, the guards immediately replied that they would search for it. Furious, Shin-hong ordered them to hurry, and they rushed toward the disposal area to begin their search. Calmly, he told his elite subordinates that those useless guards would likely die from the poison before finding the body once they returned. He planned to inspect their equipment and then enter the corpse disposal area himself. His subordinates acknowledged his orders, and Shin-hong, still irritated, thought to himself that Uran had managed to vex him even until the end. 2 weeks later, Uran was still deep within the disposal area, killing zombies and absorbing their blood. He realized he had nearly absorbed all the corpses and zombie monsters in the area. With this, he had reached the second stage of the blood demon absorption technique. Self-blood. He noticed a tremendous poison leaking from a gap nearby, and concluded that it must be coming from that direction. Shooting one of his newly created steel balls toward the source of the leak, it struck the wall, shattering the structure. He reflected on the power of the self-blood technique, which focused on the concentration and explosive release of energy. The self-blood stage provided several times more resistance to poison than the earlier blood essence stage. Without reaching the stage, he knew his body would have already melted away from the toxic environment. Despite his progress, he was aware that his time there was limited. However, he was confident that the necessary preparations were complete, and he had come to this place for a specific reason. The purpose involved the transcendental species, monsters of the highest danger level, creatures that should never be faced. Among these species, the most renowned and noble were dragons. Once a dragon had escaped through a gate. The serpent dragon Agolas was a resurrected dragon filled with rage. Many players risked their lives to face it, and miraculously they succeeded in slaying the beast. Naturally, the world was thrown into chaos, and what garnered the most attention was the value of its corpse. Agolas's blood was the finest alchemical material, and its bones could be forged into unique grade weapons. However, the dragon was tainted with poison, rage, and magic. Merely touching its corpse could cause a person's body to melt away completely. To address this, Einhardt's technology created the corpse disposal area to naturally purify the dragon's remains and employed slaves to absorb the poison. He touched Agolas's bone, swearing to the Volcano Guild that he would repay all the suffering they had inflicted on him, with interest. Without hesitation, he began to use the blood demon absorption technique on Agolas's remains. 100 years ago, Muang had asked him about the dragon embryo, to which he had replied yes. explaining that he planned to absorb it upon his return. Wu Wang had agreed, knowing the dragon embryo would help him recover a significant portion of his power, but warned him it would likely hurt like hell. That warning proved to be 100% accurate, as the moment he began absorbing Agola's embryo, a surge of immense power entered his body. The pain was so overwhelming that his mind nearly blacked out. He realized that, without the rigorous training he had endured with his masters, he would have fainted on the spot. Despite the agony, he felt his internal energy rapidly building up in his blood circulation. Even though the dragon had been dead for a long time, its power remained extraordinarily potent. He coughed up blood, but refused to back down. The pressure was insane, and he could feel that his blood circulation was already reaching its limit. Even as he compressed his inner energy with the self-blood technique, he understood that stopping now would cause the internal energy to backfire and kill him, yet continuing risked his body exploding. This outcome had been one of his expected results, but he wondered if there was another way forward. He recalled the Demon King, asking him what he would do if he couldn't absorb all the power. She had praised him for raising a very good question. She had explained that dragons were highly revered even in Gehenna, and as he suspected, it might indeed be difficult for a human body to fully accept such power. However, the solution was simple. He needed to become a dragon. Confused, he had asked if that was even possible. She had been amused by his surprise, remarking that it was odd for him to doubt, after having received all their essence. She had also reminded him that his goal was to reclaim the power he had once held. A dragon, she had said, was merely a step in his journey. This idea had sparked inspiration within him. Drawing upon the biological knowledge he had learned from the demon King Virginian, he had realized he could reconstruct his body and undergo another transformation. Convinced there was no such thing as impossible, especially for someone who had even absorbed chaos, he resolved to proceed. He resumed absorbing the dragon embryo, while simultaneously transforming his body. The pain was excruciating, far worse than before. He remembered Mu Wang's words, that transforming into a dragon embryo body was a powerful method. In the Silver World, those who possessed the body of a dragon were known by a special title. After hours of agony, he succeeded in consuming the dragon embryo. Algol's bone disintegrated in the process. When he opened his eyes, they had transformed into dragon eyes, and his body radiated an intense dragon aura. He recalled Mu Wang telling him the name of this state. It was the dragon bone body. Meanwhile, Shen Hong and his team entered the disposal area, shocked by what they saw. All the corpses and poison had vanished. Shen Hong, aware that even a guardian-level mana user couldn't achieve such a feat, felt a rising panic as he wondered what could have caused it. The thought of Algol's corpse suddenly struck him, and he frantically wondered what had happened to it. He immediately ordered his elite guard to report to the guild that all the poison in the corpse disposal area had disappeared. The guard acknowledged the command and began running out of the area to deliver the message. Before the elite could make it far, a black ball came hurtling toward him. The man managed to bend just in time to avoid a direct hit, but the ball activated moments later, unleashing a force so intense that he was reduced to ashes. Shen Hong and his team barely had time to react before the explosion reached them. Acting quickly, Shen Hong pulled one of his teammates in front of him, using the unfortunate man as a shield to protect himself from the blast. The aftermath left Shen Hong shaken. He realized the situation was extremely dangerous and feared what might happen if more explosions occur. If this continued, the entire corpse disposal area could be obliterated. At that moment, Burn appeared. Addressing Shen Hong, he remarked how Shen Hong, despite becoming the commander of the Volcano Guild's engineering unit, hadn't changed. He observed that Shen Hong still cowered behind others out of fear. With a chilling tone, he called him traitor King Shen Hong. Shen Hong recognized him and furiously demanded to know how he was still alive and if he was really Ur-on. Irene replied that it was disappointing Shen Hong didn't recognize him, just because he looked a little different, and asked if he was now willing to accept it. He added that he heard Shen Hong had sold him out and become the raid leader, but remarked that he seemed to have turned into more of a coward. Enraged, Shen Hong crushed his teammate's head, which turned to stone, and shouted at him to shut up. Shen Hong then ordered his team, the Black Hawk, to kill Yuan immediately. Without hesitation, the Black Hawk followed his command. Baran knew that Black Hawk was a personal escort assigned to raid leaders, operating at a level above even the Wasan Guild. Their skill levels were typically above 90 by player standards, making them experts on the verge of becoming rankers. Their hallmark skill was stealth, having been trained as assassins. While Yuan acknowledged that invisibility was dangerous, it was not a threat to him. As one of the Black Hawks attempted a sneak attack from behind, Yuan detected him immediately. The assassin froze in shock. Yuan turned and released a black ball, knowing stealth only worked against normal players who couldn't sense internal energy. Yuan threw the ball at the attacker, striking him in the face. The ball was a manifestation of the third level of the blood demon, divine art black blood. Specifically, it was a black blood sphere, a technique that upon contact, split like a shotgun blast, absorbed the opponent's internal energy and magic and then exploded. Iron raised his hand and conjured several more black blood spheres, crushing them into fragments and hurling them toward the other Black Hawk members. The shards struck their targets, killing them instantly as they erupted in violent explosions. Shinhong shielded his face and, horrified, wondered how Euron was able to use such a skill. Desperate for answer, he activated his system's information search ability. However, a sharp pain surged through his head. As the system's interface turned red, alarm, Shinhong noticed that the words on the system had changed into something unfamiliar, something he had never seen before. As Shinhong struggled to comprehend what was happening, Euron approached him mockingly. Euron asked if he was correct in assuming that Shinhong was dying to know how he had gained such power. He teased Shinhong, suggesting that curiosity suited him, since he never acted without first gathering sufficient information about his opponents. Yuan remarked that this cautious nature was typical of him and referred to him as the guild's main tank. Shinhong, still furious, grabbed his sword and retorted that he was no longer the Tank King Shinhong that Yuan once knew and danked, but was now the raid leader of the Hasan Guild. He accused Euron of always acting superior, pretending to be righteous, and challenged him to see if he would behave the same way now, rushing in recklessly without caring about his teammates. Provoking him further, Shinhong invited Euron to go ahead and rampage as he pleased calmly. Euron responded that it was precisely what he intended to do. He aimed a black blood sphere at Shinhong and shot it. Shinhong used his sword to block the explosion. Though he managed to withstand the force, Euron suddenly appeared behind him and remarked how little Shinhong had changed. Even as a raid leader, Euron released another black blood sphere, commenting that the Suisun Guild would never properly nurture someone like Shinhong. Anticipating the attack, Shinhong activated his white shield, which blocked the sphere just in time. Shinhong swung his sword at Yuan, shouting for him to shut up. Yuan casually tilted his head back to avoid the strike, but Shinhong halted the swing mid-motion and forcefully brought the sword down, declaring it the end for Yuan. In response, Yuan released a black blood sphere beneath Shinhong's sword, deflecting it and sending it flying backward. The force of the impact pushed Shinhong away, but he managed to remain standing by bracing himself with his sword. Shinhong demanded to know how Euron had gained such power, shouting angrily that Euron had lost his player abilities and asking how such feats were possible. Euron simply retorted that knowing wouldn't do a cowardly traitor like Shinhong any good. Enraged, Shinhong rushed forward, thrusting his sword at Euron while shouting for him to die. Euron calmly raised his hand, reminding Shinhong that it was useless, and prepared to release another black sphere. Before he could, Shinhong activated his shield wall ability, creating walls around Euron and trapping him in the center. Shinhong reasoned that Euron had no other attack methods beyond the black spheres. If that were the case, blocking Euron's retreat and his spheres with the shield would render him powerless. Confident in his plan, Shinhong thrust his sword into the center of the shield and activated his weapon Night Scale. The energy from the scale crawled along the sword, culminating in a powerful explosion within the enclosed shield. The blast shattered Shinhong's sword, but he felt certain that not even a top-ranked ranker could survive such an attack. Relieved, he called Euron a persistent bastard and assumed him to be dead. However, Shinhong's relief turned to shock as he saw Euron standing unscathed amidst the devastation. Panicking, Shinhong reached for his spare sword, demanding to know how Euron had survived. Before he could draw it, Euron appeared in front of him, grabbed Shinhong's face and coldly told him it was too late. Dragging Shinhong to the ground, Euron seemed confused by how easy it was, wondering aloud if this was all Shinhong had to offer. Chaos, a being that thrives on the destruction of worlds, transcends time and space, wandering through dimensions in search of a vessel worthy of its power. The worlds upon which chaos descends are consumed as its nourishment, and ultimately meet their demise. For over 100 years, Euron had trained relentlessly to seal that chaos. After centuries of training with his master, Euron had finally crossed the threshold, and was prepared to become Chaos's vessel. Wuong remarked to the other kings that he had done all he could. The Demon King and Sword King agreed, adding that if this failed, there was nothing more they could do together. They watched Euron from a distance as he stared at the open portal. knowing that beyond its shimmering threshold, everything would be decided. Before he stepped through, Muon called out to him asking for his name. Ern turned, raising an eyebrow at the odd question. He asked Muon if he was seriously asking for his name. After over 100 years of training together, Muon laughed, admitting that he had grown too accustomed to Ern's presence. He added that he had once been called the Heartless Ghost, without blood or tears. Yet even he seemed to have developed some attachment. Irene smiled faintly and replied that his name was Lee Irene. Without hesitation, Irene turned back to the portal and stepped forward. The instant chaos entered his body, a searing pain overtook him and he screamed in agony as masters watched in concern. Until the Demon King caught him as he collapsed, telling him that he had succeeded. Muon called his name wordly, but Ern, exhausted, murmured that he felt sleepy. Muon explained that this was the influence of chaos. His body was resisting its overwhelming power. The Sword King added that chaos was also gnawing at his spirit, warning that nightmares would now constantly plague him. Despite this, Ern forced himself to remain awake, stating that if he succumbed to the nightmares, chaos would awaken once more. He had anticipated this much. Determined, Iron stepped away from his masters. Turning to face them with a solemn expression, he told them they had to kill him now. The three kings were stunned. Muon was the first to understand, realizing that Iron had known all along. Iron proudly asked whose disciple they thought he was, stating that he understood. Their goal was to seal chaos within his body and annihilate it completely. He then asked if he was right in assuming their true objective was to destroy chaos entirely. The Sword King demanded to know why Iran had cooperated. If he had known the truth, Iran admitted that he had been betrayed by everyone and left with nothing, unable to trust anyone. However, from them, his masters, he had felt a warmth he had long forgotten. He revealed that revenge no longer mattered to him. What drove him now was a desire to repay the kindness they had shown him. Before they acted, he made one final request: to know their real names. The three kings were silent for a moment before Muon spoke, revealing his name as Shin Yunwal. The Sword King followed, stating that his name was Sieghard von Damien. Lastly, the Demon King said her name was Virginia. Ern smiled, saying he now had no regrets. He shouted that he would gladly die there for his masters, and closed his eyes, ready to accept his fate. The Sword King stepped forward and placed a hand on Ern's shoulder. Addressing him by name, the Sword King told him he would not die there. Surprised, Ern opened his eyes and asked what they meant. The Demon King gently explained that he was their disciple, their child, and Muon added that they could never kill someone like him with their own hands. Ern reminded them that sparing him would mean abandoning their mission. Softly, the Demon King told him that they would share the burden of chaos within him and seal it together. Since the chaos inside him had been shaped by their teachings, their combined power would be enough to contain it. She explained that after this, the dimensional bindings would release and Ern would return to where he belonged. Desperate, he asked what would happen to them. The Sword King replied that they would be sealed somewhere deep within the world. Before Ern could protest, they pushed him backward into the portal. As he reached for them, they told him to go and never come looking for them. Ern was curious about how far the power he had learned from his masters could take him. He had already sensed its immense potential. As someone who had once nearly reached the level of a high ranker, he wondered how his abilities would fare against others, not his masters but humans. Yet as he stared at Shin Hong trapped in his hand, he found it all too easy. Shin Hong might not have been at the level of a high ranker, but he was still at least level 150 or higher. Iron thought that, if he could acquire additional powers beyond the Blood Demon art, he would never lose, not to the leader of the Volcano Guild, nor the highest-ranking experts of the Silver Faction. He even imagined surpassing the powers of Einhard Jahenna, and ultimately the apex of that world. One hand, he had planned his revenge for over 100 years, but now that it was within his grasp, it felt underwhelming. Shin Hong stuttered his name, begging for his life, desperate. Shin Hong explained that they had no choice but to betray him. Hearing this, released his grip on Shin Hong and asked what he meant by no choice. Shin Hong, trembling, replied that otherwise they all would have died. He claimed that to save their lives, and even Ern's, there was no other way. Ern, in rage, asked Shin Hong if he was trying to say he betrayed him to save him. He accused Shin Hong of becoming the raid captain of the Volcano Guild while he endured daily agony. He demanded to know if Shin Hong expected him to believe it was all for his sake. Aiming a black spear at Shin Hong, Ern saw panic flood his former friend's face. Shin Hong stammered that he would tell him where the others were. This stunned Ern, who couldn't believe what he was hearing. Shin Hong swearing to help Yuan get his revenge if he spared his life. He coldly remarked that Shin Hong, who had already betrayed him once, was now speaking of betraying others. Grabbing Shin Hong's mouth, Burn told him that once he was dead, the others would hear of it. He instructed Shin Hong to wait for them in hell because they would be joining him soon. Without hesitation, Burn released a black sphere inside Shin Hong's mouth, causing his former teammate and best friend's head to explode into dust. A moment later, Burn emerged from the disposal area, effortlessly breaking the chains that locked it. The slaves and guards outside instinctively understood that the man who had broken free from the abyss had defeated the Black Hawks and Kim Shin Hong. He stared at the terrified slaves and thought that if not for his masters, he might have ended up like them. Releasing several black spheres, he reasoned that if the slaves were left on their own, they would likely die anyway. He might as well end their suffering himself. The slaves and guards screamed in fear and ran, but the black spheres struck them with unerring precision before they could escape. One of the slaves fell to the ground, trembling and crying, stammering that he didn't want to die. However, the black sphere shattered. The slave mark imprinted on his body instead of killing him. Confused, the slave checked his body and realized he was still alive. The other slaves worried, touched their own bodies, and discovered that their slave marks had also disappeared. Lifting his hand to the ceiling, Burn released another blast, causing the cavern to start collapsing. The slaves, realizing what was happening, scrambled to escape before leaving. Iron told them they could choose for themselves whether to die buried under the rubble or to escape alive as the stones began to fall. He jumped from one to another, making his way out of the collapsing cavern. Standing outside Mujigyeong at last, Iron reflected on how when he first met his masters, all he had wanted was to destroy the world. However, after witnessing their sacrifice, he finally understood his true purpose. Turning around, he thought about the chaos that filled the world and resolved to consume it all, making the chaos his own. Later, the Volcano Guild arrived at Mujigyeong. Chang In-woo, the leader of the Red Plum Raid from the Volcano Guild, found the situation absurd and said that he had heard the report, but he didn't think it could be true. In-woo thought to himself that everything started when they gave the raid leader position to some beggar from who knows where, turning the Volcano Guild into this mess. He then asked one of the men about the interrogation of the captured slaves. The man replied that the slaves didn't seem to remember anything at all, as if someone had interfered with their memories and erased them. In-woo asked if it was true that even the slave marks had been removed. The man confirmed this, explaining that there were traces of someone distorting the magic circle from within. This made In-woo conclude that it must have been someone at the level of a master. He asked if there were any other traces, but the man replied that no evidence of a martial artist or player had been found. It seemed to be the work of Einhardt's magicians or Jahanna's demons. In-woo surmised that it was probably Jahanna. After all, their true purpose must involve this. Suddenly another man rushed over, calling out to In-woo, and reported that the corpse of the corpse dragon had disappeared. However, In-woo had expected this, knowing that if it was Jahanna, they likely had plenty of ways to use it without purifying it. He then ordered the second man to contact their headquarters and investigate every trace of Jahanna's activity on Earth, from the past year to the last month. The second man agreed and immediately rushed to headquarters. In-woo then noticed a headless body and asked the man what that trash was doing there. The man replied that Shin Hong had come to confirm the death of the slave leader, on which surprised In-woo. He thought that if it were Iran, the one who was on the verge of becoming a high ranker, his name would have been well known by now if he hadn't touched that thing. In-woo asked about Iran's corpse, and the man explained that about a month ago, when the slave mark broke, Iran entered the abyss. In-woo concluded that Iran must be dead, as his body wouldn't have been able to withstand the poison. He then ordered the man to wrap everything up there, as they would hunt down the remaining stragglers. The man respectfully agreed. Meanwhile, in the Dongdaemun district of Seoul, Aaron entered one of the bars. There he overheard a man saying that it seemed the Volcano Guild's corpse disposal site had been attacked. This surprised the others, who asked who would be crazy enough to attack such a place. A woman responded that rumors said it was Jahanna's doing and that it looked like they were after the corpse of the corpse. Trading, she added that it seemed the truce was ending, which the others agreed with. Knowing that Jahanna had interfered with the Volcano Guild, Burn realized that everyone was only talking about the Volcano Guild. Given that the guild was one of Korea's 3 great guilds, it was no surprise. He swore to himself that soon he would bring all the guilds down. But for now they would have to wait. First, he needed to find his master Mu Wang's faction, which he believed was the most effective way to grow stronger. For someone like him with no official status, the bar was the only option to look for people. The bartender welcomed him and asked what he would like to order. He replied that he wanted cola milk, but without the milk, strong and sweet with just ice. The bartender, confused, asked if he meant cola milk without milk, adding that it wasn't even a real recipe. Another man overheard and told the bartender that he would handle it, suggesting the bartender organize the inventory in the storage room. The bartender agreed and left. Once the bartender was gone, the man turned to Iron and asked when they started using such an ancient code. He wondered if Iron had just returned from some gate 5 years later. Iron replied that it was more like 100 years later, further confusing the man, who then asked if he was some kind of demon. Iron denied it and asked the man if it even mattered when that bar was the kind of place for such things anyway. The head of the black market's Seoul branch, Jiang Hosiak, agreed with him and asked what he wanted. He simply replied that he wanted to take on a job. Hosiak asked if he had any specific type in mind, and he replied that he was fine with anything, but the location should be a D-rank gate or higher. Hosiak opened the cabinet under the counter, telling him that he had just the right jobs for him. Hosiak then grabbed some documents, placed them on the counter, and told him to take his pick. He looked at the jobs and noticed a kidnapping job. Hosiak explained that the job involved luring beginners into leveling up, trapping them in a gate, and then demanding ransom from their parents. The targets were children of rich families, meaning the payout could be substantial. Hosiak added that the job fee was 200 million with a 30 commission. He organized the documents and told Hosiak that he had brought him a trashy job. Hosiak, confused by his reaction, slowly reached for the gun under the counter while asking what was wrong with him and whether he was there to take on a job or not. Hosiak then aimed the gun at him and said that sometimes they got idiots who came there with misguided ideas of justice, trying to take the place down instead. Hosiak asked if he had considered what would happen to those who depended on that place for jobs and who he thought their anger would turn to. He quietly stared at Hosiak, who had his finger ready on the trigger. He told Hosiak not to worry, explaining that his words meant he liked it, and suggested that Hosiak tell the people behind him to lower their killing intent. Hosiak smiled, realizing he had noticed them, and told him that he guessed he could trust him with the job. Hosiak then handed him a walkie-talkie, saying he would contact him soon with the details and that he should prepare. He took the walkie-talkie, and Hosiak suggested he have a drink while he was there, adding that the place wasn't just a bar in appearance, but he declined, explaining to Hosiak that he was afraid it might become a problem. Hosiak asked why did he drove there for, to which he replied that if he drank and fell asleep, everyone there would die. Hosiak guessed he doesn't have a sense of humor, and told him it wasn't mandatory, so he should suit himself. He turned to leave, telling Hosiak that he was taking his leave. Hosiak watched him walk out of the bar, thinking that he was a late bloomer with a middle school delusion complex and that he would die soon enough at that rate. Days later in Dasindong, Namyeonju City, at a D-rank gate, a beginner waved at a man named Xiao Ho. Xiao Ho waved back at the beginner on Minhan, and informed his team that those beginners were the players joining his pieces this time. He added that they were like younger siblings to him, so they should take good care of them. The beginner players then bowed to their seniors as a sign of respect. Xiao Ho asked Minhun how he felt about his first field operation. Minhun awkwardly laughed and replied that he was a little nervous. Xiao Ho reassured them, saying there was no need to be nervous because their party members had been with him for over 3 years, which meant a D-ranked gate was no big deal. Xiao Ho then pointed to the side and told the beginners that those people were wanderers, and Huron was with the wanderers group. Min Hong and his teammates were shocked upon hearing this, but one of the girls in Min Hong's group didn't express any surprise. Chil Ho explained to Min Hong that the wanderers were martial artists, so he shouldn't worry, adding that those wanderers had been with him for over 3 years as well. This reassured Min Hong, who respectfully asked the wanderers to take care of them. Byrne knew it was natural for them to feel nervous. Wanderers were notorious for doing things no better than Jahenna's demons, which was why even in the black market, Husha had introduced him as a wanderer. But he noticed that one of the beginner players didn't seem all that surprised, and guessed that he had already found what he's been looking for. Hours later, inside the D-ranked dungeon, the group camped in an open space to rest. Minhang thanked Kiel, saying his experience points had increased significantly. Kiel asked Minhang how it felt and whether he was right about the ride on the bus being awesome. Minhang agreed, but asked Kale if they would be able to hunt on their own tomorrow. One of the men told Chale that they had come secretly, not telling their parents, because Chale had said they'd gain real combat experience. Chale reassured them not to worry, explaining that he had planned a route where they could hunt as safely as possible. He placed a hand on Minhang's shoulder and, laughing, told him that the next day they would finally get to taste some action. so they should rest up properly for now. Minhang agreed and told Xiao they trusted him. Minhang and his team then entered the tent to rest, leaving Xiao and his teammates behind, creepily smiling to themselves as they thought about how the beginners still believed their lies. A moment later, Burn sat silently near the bonfire when the lady approached him. She asked if she could sit next to him and he nodded in reply. The lady sat down and asked if he was a wanderer and if he was a martial artist. What level he was. She remarked that he hadn't really stepped in during the day's hunt. He replied by asking her if she knew it was rude to ask a martial artist about their level. Surprised, she explained that she was still a newbie player and didn't know. This made him notice that she didn't even pretend to be flustered, which he found telling. She then asked if she could know his name. He stared at her for a moment, and when she met his gaze, she felt fear and looked away. He finally replied that his name was Urun. She guessed that his name sounded familiar for some reason, but before she could dwell on it, another lady called out to her. The other woman, Yuna, reminded her that her watch was starting and told her to rest now. The lady agreed, stood up, and told Yon she would head off, adding that it was short, but she had enjoyed talking to him. Before entering the tent, Yuna glanced back at Yon, thinking he didn't seem like a bad person, but wondering about the odd feeling she had felt during their conversation. The next day, Xiao slashed a monster's neck, and one of his members informed him that it was almost time for the gate to close. Xiao told Manhwa that the gate was about to close, and if they didn't leave now, they wouldn't be able to exit until the boss was defeated. He added that it seemed they would have to aim for real action next time. Minhang asked if they couldn't just accompany Kale to the boss, pointing out that the boss should be an easy fight for him. Kale admitted it was true but expressed concern that they might get hurt. Minhang insisted that he was a proper player too and argued that if he ran away every time he was scared of getting hurt, he would never become stronger. Minhang begged Xiao not to worry and urged him to let them face the boss together. Xiao asked if Minhang was sure, and Minhang confidently agreed, which made Xiao smile, thinking he had successfully hooked him. Xiao probably told them that was the spirit of a player and suggested they test their mettle by facing those guys first, pointing to a group of orcs rushing toward them. Minhang confidently agreed, shouting that he had been waiting for this. He and his team launched their attacks at the orcs, while Kiao and one of his members exchanged a knowing nod. The system then showed that the gate was closing. As Minhang struggled to block the orcs' attack, Minhang was pushed back and shouted that they were stronger than he had expected. He called out to Chil for help, but Chil shouted back that it was chaotic on his side too. So Minhang would have to handle his side on his own. Panicking, Minhang saw the orc swing its axe down at him desperately. He grabbed something from his back, thinking he hadn't expected to need it. Minhang tore the magic circle paper to activate Fire Strike, releasing a powerful burst of flames that burned the orc to death. Minhang was still catching his breath when Chael shouted over, asking if he was alright. Kiao approached, apologizing for not helping right away, explaining that the aggro was overwhelming. He added that Minhang was lucky to have had such a high-tier scroll. Minhang explained that his father had told him to use it only in extremely dangerous situations, as it was a one-time use item. Kiao asked if that meant Minhang didn't have any more items like it. Minhang confirmed this, saying it had been a very expensive item. Chael then pulled out a scroll and aimed it at Minhang, saying it was a relief. Confused, Minhang asked what he meant. Suddenly Chael used the scroll to bind Minhang trap. Minhang shouted, asking Chael what he was doing. He was even more shocked to see that his teammates were also bound. Kiao creepily thanked Minhang for falling into their trap. Laughing nervously, Minhang told Kiao to stop joking around and untie him, but Kiao slapped him hard across the face. He sneered, asking if Minhang thought it was all a joke, just because his parents were rich. He added that it seemed he needed to make Minhang understand, so he suggested they start by cutting off one of his ears. Minhang panicked and stammered, pleading for Chil to wait. Chil froze when he heard a slash, and turned to see Yuna slaying one of his members. Shocked, Chil barely managed to block her sword in time. He shouted, asking how she had broken the magic restraints. Yuna calmly released her sword aura and asked him what he thought she should do. Chil realized she was a martial artist. She swung her sword at him with force, knocking him back yet. Chil figured out that her martial artist status was why the magic restraint hadn't worked on her. But he couldn't believe it. His information search skill had indicated she was a player. Yuna pointed out that Kiel didn't look like a second-rate, D-rank player either, and asked if he was a first-rank C-rank. The Wanderer stepped forward, telling Kiel to step back, as martial artists should handle each other. The Wanderer approached Yuna and commented that judging by her sword aura, she was at the pinnacle like him, and her spirit was impressive. However, he asked if she could take on all of them. They surrounded her. She observed that her opponents included a pinnacle martial artist and 3 ranks. Realizing the odds weren't in her favor, the Wanderer launched his sword at her, shouting that if she didn't attack first, he would make the first move. Fortunately, she managed to block in time and forcefully deflected his sword with her own. The Wanderer teasingly asked what she was doing, and if she planned to stay on the defensive forever. Struggling to block his attacks, Yuna angrily pushed him back, shouting for him not to underestimate her. She launched forward, swinging her sword at him repeatedly. The Wanderer blocked all her attacks, but was surprised by her strength. However, Yuna was also surprised when another man appeared behind her. Ready to punch her, she quickly jumped away to avoid his attack. Frustrated to realize that handling just one pinnacle Wanderer was already difficult enough, Shields shouted at her and asking what he was doing, since he hadn't hunted monsters the entire time. Xiao told Ern that if he wanted to get paid, he should catch the woman already. Ern remained silent for a moment before casually walking toward Yuna. As he approached, Yuna cursed to herself, remembering that ever since yesterday, even meeting his gaze had felt intimidating. She wondered who the hell he really was. She felt a strong killing intent from him, a feeling she thought she recognized but couldn't believe he stared at her in silence. Recalling his master Mu Wang's words that he was the master of the divine demon cult, Ern had responded to Mu Wang that he had heard of the demon cult, but asked what the divine demon cult was. Mu Wang had replied that the roots of the demon cult lay in the divine demon cult. Ern had then asked Mu Wang if the demon cult wasn't the sworn enemy of all factions, known for disrupting and overthrowing the world. Mu Wang had asked him in return if that was how he saw him, to which Ern had clarified that wasn't what he meant. Mu Wang explained that after he left, the Martial Alliance had spread propaganda as they pleased, portraying the cult as evil. In truth, they were just simple and pitiful beings. Mu Wang had added that when Eren returned, he should take good care of them. Eren's thoughts returned to the present, as he recognized that even if Yuna could fool others, she couldn't fool his eyes. Her power was undoubtedly rooted in demonic cultivation. He remembered a slave once telling him that remnants of the demon cult could be found in the black market, where they rescued kidnapped people and recruited them into their faith. The slave had confessed that he had been caught in human trafficking and ended up learning about it firsthand. At the time, Eren had dismissed it as nonsense, but now he realized how useful that information was. The Wanderer broke his thoughts, asking what he was staring at and whether he planned to attack. Eren responded by telling the Wanderer to shut up, shocking Kiao and prompting the Wanderer to ask what he had just said. Eren asked the Wanderer if he was deaf, and repeated that his breath reeked, so he should shut up. Yuno was just as confused as Kiao. The Wanderer turned to Kiao and asked what was wrong with Arun. Kiao replied that he wasn't exactly sure, explaining that he had simply hired Arun from the black market to clean things up if the situation went south. The Wanderer then asked if that meant it wouldn't matter if he killed Arun without waiting for a response. The Wanderer slashed Eren, only to be shocked when his sword shattered upon impact with the black spheres in Eren's hand. The Wanderer couldn't believe his aura-imbued sword had been cut down so easily, and realized that Eren was a master far beyond his level. The thought crossed his mind, that could Yuan be at the transcendent level? Chill's teammate rushed forward, shouting in panic, asking what was wrong with Yuan and ordering everyone to attack all at once. Iran calmly reminded them that the gate was closed, meaning killing everyone wouldn't matter anymore. The Wanderer tried to stop them, but Iran said it was too late and unleashed his black spheres, piercing their bodies. The spheres absorbed their internal energy as the Wanderer concluded that Eren was at least a supreme master. Moments later, the black spheres exploded, and Eren watched with a blank face as their bodies disappeared. He turned his gaze to Yahello, who was stuttering in fear. Eren asked if Yahello really had the leisure to focus on him alone. Yahello froze suddenly, feeling Yuna behind him. But it was too late. Yuna swung her sword, decapitating Yahello in one strike. His head hit the ground with a dull thud, followed by his lifeless body. Eren stared at Yuna, who was catching her breath in exhaustion, and asked if it was his turn now. She sheathed her sword, implying that there was no way she could fight him, and she wasn't foolish enough to try, knowing she'd die. He reminded her that he had been part of Chill's party just moments ago, but she countered by pointing out that he had wiped them all out himself. She told him not to pretend they were on the same side, and guessed that he must have a goal. Whatever his goal was, she offered to help him, asking if he would spare her if she did. He asked her back what if he wants her life. She was surprised, but calmly replied that if he wanted her life, he would have taken it already. He realized she was sharp. Before they could speak further, a loud growl interrupted them. They turned to see a massive monster approaching. Byrne calmly asked if it was the gate boss and reminded her that she said she'd help. He told her to handle the monster and get them out of there, confusing her further nonetheless. She replied yes and rushed to fight the boss. A moment later they emerged from the dungeon. Manhwa collapsed to his knees, unable to believe they were outside. He and his team were shaking with fear but furious over Kale's betrayal. Yuno told Manhwa that she guessed she had let Kale off too easily. Recognizing her, Manhwa and his team thanked her for saving their lives. He then asked why she had hidden the fact that she was a martial artist and joined their newbie party. She pointed to a man in a suit and told Manhwa that he would explain. The man approached and told them to get in the car, promising to escort them home and explain on the way. They agreed and drove off with the man. Yuna turned back to Yuan and asked how she could help them now. Yuan replied that he wanted to ask her one thing first. She asked what it was, and he questioned whether she was from the heavenly sect or the blood sect. Shocked, she stammered, asking what he meant by that. He asked again if she wasn't a demon cult member and assured her he had no intention of reporting her to the Martial Alliance. Her expression hardened and she furiously glared at him, asking if he was part of the cult. He noticed her sudden change in demeanor and asked if that meant she would allow him to act that way toward her. If he were a cult member, she demanded he answer repeatedly, asking if he was part of the cult. He simply reminded her that he had asked first. Suddenly men in suits surrounded him. Swords aimed at his neck. He remained calm, telling her this was her last chance to answer. He asked her again if she was from the heavenly sect or the blood sect. The men couldn't believe the overwhelming pressure radiating from Maroon, wondering if he was a monster. Yuna shouted that she was from the blood sect. Shocking her men, she ordered them to put away their swords, explaining that Uran was her benefactor. The men hesitated, reminding her that he knew about their existence. Fearfully she stared at them and explained that if Iran wanted, killing all of them wouldn't even be a challenge, making any threats against him meaningless. Her men, trembling, finally put their swords down. She turned to Uran and said she had answered his question, so now it was his turn to answer hers. She asked again if he was a follower of the religion. Lowering his aura, he calmly replied that for now, they could just say he was a follower. Yuna admitted she still didn't understand what her benefactor desired, but promised to help with anything. She asked if he would tell her his goal now or if they should go together. He replied that he would accompany her. They entered a luxury van together. As they settled in, Yuna excused herself, explaining she needed some air. She then held her face, which stretched like silicone, and slowly removed it, confused. Byrne realized she was peeling off an infinite mass. After removing it, she took off the hair tie holding her hair, revealing an even more striking and enhanced beauty. He remarked that she was quite beautiful, and she thanked him, asking if he was showing his real face. He replied that it had changed a bit from before. She asked if Ern was his real name, and when he simply said yes, she was surprised. He added that it was now his turn to ask questions, referring to her party members like and Manhwa. He noted that they seemed clueless about her identity. He then asked if the promise to take them home was a lie. He added that judging by her infinite mass, worth billions, and the limousine, it was clear money wasn't an issue for her. He asked if her real goal was recruiting followers for the cult. She admitted that he was correct, explaining that her original plan had been to build rapport and gradually recruit them, but Shio had messed things up. Nodding, he remarked that rich kids must bring in incredible amounts of donations, and asked if that was how she had made her money so far. She responded that while they collected donations, they didn't demand absurd amounts like the associations did. Ultimately, what they wanted was a guild. She explained that joining the cult came with the condition of helping establish a guild, so it wasn't exactly a losing deal for players. He guessed that guilds were essential for players who couldn't progress without leveling up. She then turned the question back to him, asking what martial arts technique he had used at the gate. He noted how aggressive she was for jumping straight to identifying his technique. She explained that she had shared the cult's secret, so she deserved to know at least that much. He replied that he couldn't use his martial arts for now. Shocking her, she found it hard to believe, considering he had destroyed a pinnacle martial artist's head. He calmly explained that it was like a version of Tang Ji Gong, asking if she even considered that martial arts. He then shifted the topic, asking what the cult was doing in Huaxi. She asked if he meant the special commissions and explained that they took commissions in Huaxi to gain experience for their followers. He asked if that included things like kidnapping or murder. She shouted that their cult should not be lumped in with such scum, explaining that they only hunted red players or infamous rogues. He asked if recruiting followers was also a goal. She calmly replied that he was correct. Ern thought they weren't as bad as Muwang had described. In fact, the Huising Guild felt more like a villainous group to him. Yuna then hesitated before asking one last question. Was he the infamous comrade killer Ern? Her question triggered a strong reaction. Ern released an intense presence and the entire limousine shook. She, along with the car, trembled in fear. She wondered why her body wouldn't move. Even though she was at the pinnacle herself, she felt that his presence was like that person, that demonic man. She remembered he calmed himself after seeing her reaction, which allowed her to catch her breath. She peeked at him, wondering if his display was a warning. The limousine stopped and he noted they had arrived. The driver opened the door and he ordered Yunha to lead the way. They stepped out in front of the Ganga Group building, with S-rank Chairman Kang Hanxiao standing at the forefront. Ern knew the corporation was massively influential across South Korea and Asia. He couldn't believe the Ganga building was the headquarters of the blood cult. Yuna asked if he would go in, and he asked if she would let him go if he said no. She replied that if he wanted to enter, he would go in regardless. He told her that even if he didn't, they would keep chasing him. Eventually, he would be hunted by both the Haoasan Guild and the blood cult, which shocked her, confirming in her mind that he truly was the Iron. He added that if he kidnapped her, perhaps the pursuit would lessen. Worried, she told him not to joke about such things, especially theirs. Bringing him there was a gamble for her too. Suddenly a voice called him an insolent wretch. They turned to see Han Xiao rushing toward them in anger. Furious, Han Xiao demanded to know if Ern had dared threaten the lady. Han Xiao dashed forward, shouting for Ern to prepare himself. Yuna called Han Xiao her grandfather and tried to stop him, but it was too late. Han Xiao launched a powerful punch at Ern, causing a loud explosion. However, Han Xiao was stunned to see Ern calmly block his punch with his bare hand. Ern asked in an unbothered tone if this was how the blood cult treated their benefactors. Later they were inside the Ganga Group headquarters, seated in front of a table laden with delicious meals. Han Xiao, laughing, admitted that he had been mistaken and told Ern to eat his fill. Ern silently stared at the food, which Han Xiao noticed. He assured her not to worry because the food wasn't poison. Ern smiled at the comment and began eating, explaining that poison didn't work on him and that it had simply been a long time since he'd had a proper meal. Han Xiao, cutting his steak, responded that if that was the case, Ern should eat as much as he wanted. As Han Xiao observed him, he recalled the information he'd gathered in a short time. According to reports, Ern was a so-called companion killer named Li Ern, enslaved by the Volcano Guild and declared dead recently. However, Han Xiao noted that Ern's appearance was entirely different from what was reported. Even more curious was the energy Han Xiao had felt when Iron blocked his attack earlier. It was clearly internal power, not the strength of a typical player. This left Han Xiao wondering about Ern's true identity. While Han Xiao suspected that Ern's internal energy level wasn't higher than his own, he found Ern's relaxed attitude unnerving. Han Xiao finally spoke, acknowledging that Ern had come because Yuna owed him a favor and had promised to grant him a wish. He encouraged Ern to state what he wanted, assuring him that anything within his power would be granted, but only if Ern made one promise beforehand. Ern guessed that Han Chil wanted him to join the blood sect. Han Chil confirmed this, adding that Ern seemed to know a lot about their sect and asking how he'd come by that information. Han Chil then mentioned that he'd never heard of the companion killer, Li Iron, being a member of their sect. Hearing this, Iron grew angry and demanded to know if Han Xiao had been researching him. Han Xiao explained that he couldn't allow someone into the sect's base without knowing anything about them, a statement that heightened the tension in the room. Yuna felt the strain in the air between them. Han Xiao asked that if Ern had heard about the sect while working at the Volcano Guild's monster disposal site. Ern replied close. Han Xiao then inquired if Ern had asked about the Heavenly Sect and the Blood Sect, and if so, which side he was on. Ern replied that for now, he supposed they could say the Blood Sect. Han Xiao pressed him on what he meant by for now, but Ern simply said he'd explain the details later. Han Xiao agreed to officially make Iran a sect member, but was surprised when Iran declared he had no intention of serving under Han Xiao. Instead, Iran suggested that Han Xiao should serve under him. Infuriated, Han Xiao called him arrogant. He released a powerful aura that shook the entire building and demanded if Iron realized what he was saying. Iron, unbothered, calmly replied, "Of course." When Yuna tried to intervene, Erun addressed Han Xiao directly, ordering him to hand over the position of Blood Demon. This enraged Han Xiao further, slamming his fist on the table. He shattered it into pieces, but Erun remained seated and unfazed. Han Xiao warned him that he had crossed the line. When Yuna attempted to calm her grandfather, Han Xiao shouted at her to stay back, leaving her hesitant. He reminded her of the punishment for daring to speak of the Blood Demon's name and told her even she couldn't protect Erun. Realizing the situation was dire, Erun stood up and raised his hand. He knew that realistically, he was one level below Han Xiao. Although he had progressed quickly, his body couldn't yet use martial arts effectively. Han Xiao, noticing this, asked if Iron needed a weapon and offered to provide one. Iron declined, explaining that using a weapon would cause problems. This only frustrated Han Xiao further. He called Iron arrogant, questioning why he wouldn't even take a fighting stance. Iron reiterated calmly that he couldn't use martial arts, which pushed Han Xiao to his limit. Han Xiao's aura intensified, shattering the building's glass as he shouted, accusing Iron of mocking him. Iron, however, maintained his composure, insisting he was serious. Henschel declared that since Erun needed no preparation, he should attack out of consideration for Yuna. Henschel would give him 3 seconds. Erun asked if the blood sect was always dishonorable. Henschel replied that they were treating him as a guest to be dealt with, not an enemy. Yuna pleaded with her grandfather to reconsider, but Han Xiao ordered her to step aside. Desperate, she turned to Erun and addressed him as an honored guest, urging him to retract his statement. Han Xiao, furious, demanded to know who Erun was to warrant such loyalty from Yuna. Even Yuna herself didn't fully understand why she was defending Erun. She instinctively felt that he was the one who could save the blood sect from its crisis. Erun, noticing this, revealed that Yuna was the priestess, an oracle serving the blood demon. Han Xiao finally launched his attack. As his fist neared Erun, Yuna tried to stop him, but it was too late. The resulting explosion shook the floor and could be heard outside. Yuna shielded herself from the blast, and when she looked up, was shocked to see her grandfather's flames disappearing. Realizing the flames hadn't simply vanished but were being absorbed, she and Han Xiao were stunned. Erun had absorbed Han Xiao's demon flame completely. Han Xiao, in disbelief, realized that the martial art Erun had used was unmistakably the blood demon art. Erun asked if Han Xiao now understood and ordered him to kneel. Overwhelmed, Han Xiao knelt, immediately followed by Yuna. Both bowed before Erun and greeted him as their master. Erun confirmed their submission, proclaiming himself the blood demon, the master of the blood sect. Han Xiao, sweating in fear, wondered how a player could know the blood demon arts. Erun then asked if Han Xiao could hand over the position of blood demon now, but Han Xiao remained silent. This prompted Erun to question why he wasn't answering. Stuttering, Han Xiao explained that it was because the current blood demon already ruled the blood sect, which surprised Erun. Iron asked if Han Xiao meant there was already a blood demon, to which Han Xiao replied affirmatively. Iron then questioned why Han Xiao had kneeled to him if there was already a blood demon. Han Xiao explained that the current blood demon's blood demon art was a less complete form than Iron's. Respectfully, Han Xiao added that while he couldn't fathom how Iron had mastered the blood demon art, it was considered the proof of the blood demon's identity and the symbol of the blood sect. Everyone laughed, mocking Han Xiao's statement. He asked if Han Xiao truly believed the blood demon art was the proof of the blood demon's identity, calling it ridiculous. He then remarked that he now understood why the blood sect was in its current state. Han Xiao, confused, looked at him as everyone declared that the current blood demon was nothing more than a half-baked imposter. Harnessing the black power around him, Yuan transformed it into sharp blades, aimed directly at Han Xiao's head. He then asked Han Xiao about his position in the blood sect. Han Xiao replied that he was the left protector. Aware that someone of Han Xiao's rank would know such details, Yuan withdrew his demon power and began explaining. He told Han Xiao that the true symbol of the blood demon was not the blood demon art, absorbing all the demon power in the room. He revealed that it was the blood demon divine art. Han Xiao was shocked, realizing that Yuan was the true blood demon. It no longer mattered how this had happened. There was no more concrete proof than the energy of the divine art. Both Han Xiao and Yuna bowed their heads even lower, shouting reverently, "Blood demon's grace." Endless dark blessing around. Unimpressed, asked them what that was. Han Xiao explained that it was a traditional greeting dedicated to the blood demon, passed down in the blood sect. Iran scoffed, calling it cheesy, and ordered them to stop saying it. When Han Xiao hesitated, Ern firmly repeated the order. Leaving no room for argument, Ern sat back down and asked Han Xiao to tell him about the current state of the blood sect, specifically what he needed to know to deal with the half-baked demon. Han Xiao reported that the sect was currently governed by 6 elders, as well as himself as the left protector and the right protector. However, he warned that the elder would not easily accept the emergence of a new blood demon, as the current one had ruled for over 10 years. Iron asked what would happen if he simply killed all those who opposed him. Han Xiao responded that each elder had a specific role in managing the sect, such as investigating external affairs or expanding influence, so it was better to keep them alive, as some might prove useful. Han Xiao then offered to personally meet the elders to gauge their intentions. Should Iran command it, Iran agreed and ordered him to proceed, which Han Xiao acknowledged before leaving the room. After Han Xiao departed, Anhara remained behind. She bowed her head and shouted Blood Demon's grace. Endless dark blessing. This made her shout in frustration, reminding her he had told them to stop saying that. Next morning in Namyangju at King Hansel's villa, guards patrolled the premises diligently. Inside, Yuna exhaled deeply to calm her nerves as she approached Ern's room. Knocking on the door, she heard his voice permitting her to enter. She stepped inside, kneeling in her elegant dress to greet him. Ern asked her what she was doing. Yuna explained that it was her morning greeting to the blood demon. He raised an eyebrow and asked if she had dressed up just for this. She replied that she had ran and ordered her not to do it again. Questioning why they were making such a fuss first thing in the morning, Yuna explained that as the priest is serving the blood demon, it was her duty. Iran cut her off, stating that if he ordered her not to do it, she shouldn't. He then told her to go back to sleep. Surprised, she explained that the priestess must always wake earlier and sleep later than the blood demon. Iran sighed and told her bluntly that he couldn't sleep. Shocked, Yuna exclaimed that such a thing was unbecoming. He replied seriously, insisting he wasn't joking. He literally couldn't sleep. He repeated that she should skip the formalities, ensure she got enough rest, and stop giving morning greetings. Still, Yuna persistently told him that she too would follow the blood demon in sleepless training. Ern sighed and asked her why she wouldn't listen, reminding her that as the blood demon, he commanded her to stop the morning greetings, weird formalities, and instead act as casually as they had at the gate. This shocked her even more. Stuttering, she replied yes, prompting him to ask why she was glitching out. He quickly realized it must be overwhelming for her to accept that a player was now the blood demon. Yuna immediately denied being overwhelmed, but Irene dismissed her response and told her the historical drama speech style was also forbidden. She replied that she understood, and he asked if saying okay, or I understand, was truly that difficult for her. Hesitant at first, she eventually managed to say okay. He praised her for trying, and then asked if there had been any word from Han Xiao. She replied that she hadn't heard anything yet. Ern stood up and remarked that regardless of what happened, his role was already decided. Yuna asked what that role was. He replied that he would take down the half-baked demon. He then asked if he was right, and assuming she understood, it was a world where the strong reigned supreme. If he proved to everyone that he was stronger than the half-baked blood demon, everything would fall into place. For that, he needed to train. He asked if there was a training hall in the villa and ordered her to lead the way. 100 years ago, Ern had asked his master, Mu Wang, when he would teach him martial arts techniques. Mu Wang had replied that it was a good question and explained that the techniques Ern would learn had been adjusted so that the three of them, his companions and him, could fully utilize their power. In other words, their individual learnings had been made to mesh seamlessly like gears in a machine. Using abilities prematurely before they were fully gained, or failing to completely acquire specific strengths, would hinder the use of subsequent powers. Just like forcing an incomplete gear to rotate would lead to a malfunction. Mu Wang had told him that before completing the blood demon divine art, he could not use any other weapons or arts. The sword god had added that experiencing this limitation personally would help Ern understand better. They ordered him to try swinging a sword. Ern had taken the sword and swung it clumsily, only to accidentally slash himself, screaming in pain back in the present. Ern was in the villa's training room, controlling his aura and power. He thought to himself that he never wanted to experience the pain of slashing himself again. He would rather endure a full body transformation 10 times over. Still, thanks to the dragon's blood flowing through him, he had reached the final stage of the black blood. However, it was incomplete, as the blood had not yet been fully absorbed. Nevertheless, the dragon's blood coursed through his entire body. He drew some blood out of his body, knowing that he needed to discard all unnecessary vitality, so that only pure strength would remain. A powerful black blood and dark energy flowed out of him, radiating intense strength. A week later, Yuna knelt in front of the training room door. Thinking to herself that it had been an entire week, she wondered what in the world Uran was doing. In her opinion, it shouldn't have been possible for Uran to train in the blood demon art. In an empty training hall like this, suddenly the door creaked open and she gasped in shock. Uran emerged, his body now perfectly strong and radiating immense power. Uran looked down at his hands, a satisfied expression on his face. He had finally entered the final stage of the blood demon divine art. A moment later, Uran was mixing his bibimbap and eating it, while Yuna sat beside him, staring at him intently, noticing her gaze. He asked if she wanted some, but she remained silent, lost in thought. She marveled at how he had progressed so much in just a week. It was hard to believe, knowing that without pure blood and a special ritual, mastering the blood demon art was supposed to be impossible. She wondered how he had achieved this in an empty training hall. She snapped out of her thoughts when he asked if she was going to eat or not. Startled, she immediately bowed and stuttered that she would prepare the food herself next time. He told her there was no need, as he had simply thrown everything together and mixed it, reiterating that he was asking if she wanted to eat. Turning to his side, he addressed the invisible men around them, telling them he had no intention of being guarded by those weaker than him. He ordered them to drop their stealth and join him to eat. Yuna was shocked. She realized that he had noticed the Shadow Blood Squad, an elite group of guards painstakingly trained by the elders. Their stealth skills were said to rival the famed Ghostly Melody assassins of Yun. She couldn't fathom how he had detected them so casually. Watching him call out the men and order them to hurry up and eat, she wondered at his extraordinary perception. Later, Uran returned to the training room to continue refining the blood demon divine art. He noted that true blood felt powerful, and with the black dragon's blood almost fully absorbed, he knew he needed to refine the black blood into true blood. This would perfect the purity of the true blood circulating through his blood core. After finishing his session, he left the training room, reflecting that the only thing he lacked now was time to shorten, that he needed to seize control of the blood sect. Yuna greeted him, announcing that the meal was ready. He glanced at the dish and saw that the bibimbap was unusually orange. He commented that he thought he had told her he would handle his meals himself. She replied that she couldn't let him personally prepare food. While she was there, he asked if she had added too much chili, which shocked her. She thought it made the dish taste better. Suddenly she knelt down and shouted that she had committed a grave sin and would pay with her life. Exasperated, he shouted back, reminding her to stop doing that. Suddenly Uran felt something unusual. He immediately looked outside the window. Silent and alert, Yuna noticed his reaction and asked what was wrong. He simply replied, "They have guests outside the villa." The guards confronted the guests, shouting that they could not enter. The elder among them demanded to know what they meant by that. The third elder, a cold-blooded Taoist named Han Dobuk, asked if the guards didn't know who he was. One of the guards replied that they recognized him. Dobuk, annoyed, asked if they still refused to step aside despite knowing who he was. Releasing a strong, icy aura, he demanded an explanation. The guard responded that Left Protector Han Xiao had ordered that no one could pass without permission. Dobuk swung his sword forward, releasing a sharp wave of cold ice, and stated that he knew it wasn't their fault. Out of mercy, he offered them a final warning. Pointing his sword at the guards, he ordered them to step aside, declaring he would overlook their offense if they obeyed. A cold-blooded tiger spirit loomed behind Dobuk, adding to his intimidation. The guards hesitated but ultimately drew their swords, apologizing as they stood their ground. Dobuk dashed forward with his sword, praising the guards for their proper attitude. As followers of the blood sect, the lead guard was stunned, realizing Dobuk had appeared in front of him in an instant. Dobuk swung his sword, aiming for the guard, but stopped when Manhwa shouted his name. He looked up to see her standing between him and the guards. Dobuk loudly asked Yunha what she was doing, calling her behavior reckless. She shouted back, demanding to know what he was doing there, reminding him that Han Xiao had not granted permission for his visit. Dobuk, remaining calm, called her by name and asked if she truly didn't understand Han Xiao's plot. He then shouted that Han Xiao was committing treason by dividing the blood sect. They had barely managed to unify. Dobuk asked how he could stand by and allow this. Yuna firmly explained that the blood demon was someone she, as the priestess, had chosen, and asked if Dobuk still doubted him. Dobuk retorted by asking how a former player could master the blood demon art, leaving her momentarily speechless. Dobuk continued, pointing out that throughout history, There had been imposters claiming to be the blood demon. He warned that Iran could be a spy from the Celestial clan. Even if Iran was the real blood demon, Dubek stated the law did not permit two suns under the same sky. At this rate both she and Han Xiao would be charged with treason. To prevent further escalation, Dobek declared he would handle the matter himself, pointing his sword at her. He told her to step aside, adding that he didn't want to lose her or Han Xiao. Yuna stood her ground, insisting that Han Xiao would never forgive such an act. Dubek responded that he had already made his decision, and even if it put him at odds with Han Xiao or cost him his life, it was the least he could do for his friend. Dobek apologized to Yuna for his rudeness but insisted she move aside. Before he could swing his sword, Han Xiao suddenly appeared, launching a furious punch that caused a strong explosion. Dobek fortunately managed to block it with his sword. Henschel addressed Dobek respectfully as third elder. Before angrily switching to his real name, he demanded to know what Dobek thought he was doing. The elders with fire and ice magic power stood face to face. Han Xiao, expecting this confrontation, wondered why things had escalated so quickly. As he stared at his old friend, Dobek broke the silence, telling Han Xiao that the Volcano Guild was on the move, which shocked both Han Xiao and Yuna. Dobek added that the guild had found their trail. He then asked Han Xiao what he thought would happen if the existence of a new blood demon was announced now. Dobek warned that Han Xiao would be the first to be discarded, thrown to the enemies as bait. Han Xiao argued that the Volcano Guild had no reason not to oppose the blood demon. Dobek pressed him further, asking if he had considered the possibility that Iron might be a spy. This enraged Han Xiao, who shouted that the suggestion was absurd. Releasing more of his power, Han Xiao forced Dobek to protect himself by blocking the fiery aura with his ice magic. Han Xiao angrily asked if Dobek was accusing him of failing to recognize true blood demon arts. Dobek, remaining composed, responded that Han Xiao knew as well as he did that the Heavenly Demon Cult had spent ages researching the blood demon arts. Though unlikely, he argued, the cult could have achieved such mastery. Han Xiao shouted it was enough. But Dobek defiantly continued, declaring that even if Euron was the true blood demon, it changed nothing. Han Xiao was stunned. Dobek elaborated that causing division within the blood sect at such a time was suicidal. Killing around, he argued, was the right choice. Dobek's words further fueled Han Xiao's anger. He warned Dobek that he had crossed a line he should never have crossed. Dobek gripped his sword tightly, positioning himself, and asked Han Xiao how he could stand idly by while throwing himself into the flames. The two prepared to clash. Han Xiao vowed to sever Dobek's limbs and begged the blood demon for forgiveness, but Dobek retorted that Han Xiao might as well kill him outright. Han Xiao leapt forward, launching a flaming fist at Dobek, who swung his sword in retaliation. Before their attacks could connect, Euron calmly ordered them to stop. Both elders froze in shock. Dobek suddenly felt an overwhelming presence behind him. Han Xiao immediately recognized the blood demon and bowed deeply, greeting Euron with utmost respect. Sweating, Dobek turned to see Euron and realized he hadn't even sensed his presence. Han Xiao shouted at Dobek to bow before the blood demon, but Dobek hesitated. He understood that if Euron had aimed for his neck, he would already be dead. Looking closely, Dobek noticed Euron's crimson hair and scarlet eyes, unmistakable proof of blood demon arts. At last Dobek acknowledged Euron as the blood demon, sheathed his sword, and greeted him with deference. Euron told Han Xiao to stop prostrating, saying he didn't like it. He asked Han Xiao why he had been cutting off the limbs of his sect members when the blood sect was already crumbling. Han Xiao stuttered an apology. Turning to Dobek, who had stepped back in fear, Euron asked if Dobek had come to kill him, spare him if he met his standards, or kill him if he didn't. Dobek hesitated, seeing Iran's blood-colored eyes, but managed to reply that he had. He explained that the blood sect already served a blood demon, and the emergence of a new one would destabilize the sect, which was only now beginning to stabilize. Smiling, Euron praised Dobek for his courage, saying it was fitting for a senior elder. He asked Dobek for his verdict. Did Euron meet his standards? Dobek, still trembling, said proof was needed. Euron thought for a moment, then extracted a drop of his own blood, asking if it sufficed. Dobek stared at the floating drop, horrified by the overwhelming blood demon energy it radiated. Realizing the truth, Dobek immediately knelt, addressing Euron as the true blood demon. Dobek, overcome with guilt, grabbed his sword and declared that he would sever his right arm to atone for doubting the blood demon. As he raised the sword, Iron casually shot a blood bullet Knocking it away, Dobek's sword pierced the ground behind him. As Irene reminded him that he had told them not to cut off their limbs, and that they never listened. A moment later, Yunha, Dobek and Han Kiao were kneeling. Burn sat on the sofa visibly frustrated and told them to sit there instead. Han Xiao replied that they couldn't possibly sit on the same level as the blood demon. Yuan exasperated let them do as they pleased. Han Xiao studied Yuan closely, recalling the power he had felt earlier. In just over a week, Yuan had grown even stronger. Anshel asked if it was possible that Yuan had reached the transcendent state. Burn replied that he hadn't yet. Anshel optimistically noted that at this rate Burn would soon reach transcendence. Dobek, however, pointed out that the current blood demon had already reached the transcendent stage, as had the first elder who was closest to him. Among the remaining elders, Dobek added none would switch sides to support a new blood demon. Yuna interjected, saying there was only one solution. Since Yuan was progressing faster than expected, he needed to quickly reach transcendence and personally defeat the current blood demon. If he did so, even the elders would have no choice but to accept him as the new blood demon. Burn asked how long it would take to reach transcendence, admitting he wasn't even sure he could achieve it. Yuno was taken aback. Yuan then asked if they thought the sect would simply sit back and wait. Turning to Dobek, he pointed out that by now his existence must already be known to the blood sect, which explained why they were hurrying to act against him. Hankiao slammed his head to the floor in a hard bow. Shouting his apologies, he explained that he had thought the fourth elder might be open to switching sides given his tendencies, but it turned out the fourth elder had already aligned himself with the current blood demon. Yuan told Han Xiao to stop groveling over trivial matters and declared that since things had come to this, they should act. He stood and told them it was time to take down the current blood demon. Passing through the gate transported them to an unknown land filled with monsters, while passing through a dungeon led to another world. The world first learned of the dungeon's existence when gate breaks occurred everywhere, threatening to destroy civilization. Humanity was saved by humans from another world. Superhuman players later began appearing among Earth's inhabitants. However, these players couldn't compare to the residents of invaded worlds, who had fought mysterious beings for countless ages. In the end, the world endured their intervention. Yun controlled the Asian region, while Einhard dominated the Western territories. These forces divided the world, exercising their influence. Yun, which came to dominate most of South Korea's land, ensured that the blood sect concealed its entrance thoroughly from their watchful eyes. Yun asked if the entrance was supposed to blend into existing structures, pointing to a door by the banks of the Bakken River, and questioned if it had always been there. Yuna replied that she thought the blood demon's fortress door shouldn't look too ordinary, so she had added some flair. Burn asked if she was even trying to hide it. Yuna confidently explained that reaching that location meant bypassing all of the blood, sex traps and magical barriers, so there was no longer any need to hide it. She proudly declared that among Yun's inhabitants, Burn was the only one who had made it that far. Yuna then asked if this was his first time in Yun's world. To her surprise, Burn replied that he had been there once before. Impressed, she told him she had expected nothing less, as he had been exceptional even as a player. Burn cryptically replied that perhaps if he'd lived like everyone else, things wouldn't have turned out this way, leaving her confused. He told her not to mind it and ordered her to open the door, which she immediately did. Yuna placed her hand on the gate, releasing her demon power to unlock it. The group watched in silence as she worked. Eventually, she succeeded in opening the gate and welcomed him into the blood demon's fortress. Yuan stepped through and was shocked by the sight of the super poor, destroyed place. Disappointed, he remarked that although he'd heard things were in decline, he hadn't expected it to be this bad. Tubek lowered his head in embarrassment, and Han Xiao apologized for the state of the fortress. Burn turned to Yuna and asked what could possibly have caused such a state. Yunho explained that Yun's world was a fragment of a destroyed world. To sustain it, nourishment was require resources like magic stones from monsters or gate cores. She began to elaborate on how the fortress was massive, even compared to other parts of Yun's world, but Iram cut her off, pointing out that the sheer scale meant it consumed far more nourishment. He added that this explained the sect's desperation to recruit followers, which she sadly confirmed. Duran asked why the Kang Ha Guild, being a large corporation, hadn't focused more on collecting magic stones. Han Xiao explained that drawing too much attention could endanger the sect. If a guild like Volcano discovered the blood demon's fortress entrance in its current state, it would be impossible to guarantee the future. Yuna added that while that was one reason, the elders had also prohibited hunting gate monsters. Burn, incredulous, asked what kind of nonsense that was. Yun explained that the elders claimed it violated the laws for the great blood demon's followers to hunt mere beasts frustrated. Baron slapped his forehead, declaring that a thorough cleanup was in order. Turning to Dobak, he asked if Dobak agreed. Dobak immediately replied no, explaining that he had never supported such ideas and had even established a guild in the outer world to continue their activities. Suddenly a man appeared and announced their arrival. The man introduced himself as the Blood Sword Captain Jonjitsu and explained that his unit had been ordered to escort them to the Blood Demon's fortress. Yun, suspicious, drew her sword and aimed it at the Blood Swords, asking if they intended to take them by force. Jisoo calmly replied that they were simply following the Blood Demon's orders. Han Xiao released his flames and demanded to know if they thought he would go willing. Signed, Jisoo unsheathed his sword, joined by his unit. Han Xiao and Dobak stood ready to fight, but Ern suddenly told them to stand down, surprising everyone. Yun turned to him in shock, but he calmly explained that since the Blood Swords had come all that way to escort him, he might as well go. He walked forward and told the group not to be scared and to follow, leaving them confused but compliant. A moment later they arrived at the Blood Demon's fortress. The Blood Throne Hall. Han Xiao's gaze fell on the fake lord, who was ending his seclusion training. Noticing that the fake lord was far stronger than before, Han Xiao grew wary. A man beside the fake lord accused Han Xiao of conspiring against the Blood Demon, asking how he, someone who served closest to the Blood Demon, could betray him. Han Xiao calmly replied that he merely sought the true Blood Demon, enraging the man and the other elders. The elders shouted that such claims were blasphemous, demanding to know what nonsense Han Xiao was spouting. The fake lord, unfazed, said it was fascinating and asked if there truly was another Blood Demon besides himself. The elders exchanged worried glances, but the fake lord declared that the timing was perfect. He admitted to hitting a wall and advancing his Blood Demon art, and revealed his intention to absorb Ern's power to ascend as the Blood Demon God. Han Xiao and Dobak were stunned, their shock mingled with fear. One elder stammered, praising the fake lord's wisdom and claiming that if he became the Blood Demon God, all problems would be solved. Ern, unfazed, dismissed the notion as nonsense, startling everyone in the hall. He then addressed the fake lord directly, telling him to stop spouting drivel and to calm down so he could show him just how pathetic he truly was. The fake lord's calm demeanor shattered, and rage consumed him. The fake lord crushed the armrest of his throne in anger, releasing a powerful aura of true blood as he demanded to know what Ern had just said. One of the elders shouted in outrage, asking how dare he insult the Blood Demon. The elder then assured the fake lord that there was no need for him to intervene, as they could handle Ern themselves. The other elders agreed, rising to their feet and declaring that no one should challenge the Blood Demon without first going through them. The fake lord permitted it with a nod, and the elders stepped forward to confront Ern. Yun, Dobak, and Han Xiao immediately moved to protect him, spreading out defensively. Han Xiao, however, couldn't believe the elders were resorting to teaming up. At least he thought the first elder seemed to have no intention of joining in. A martial artist to his core, the first elder had always despised group attacks and trickery. This was a small relief, but the power gap was still far too great. Han Xiao knew the ideal strategy would have been to take down the elders one by one, and he wondered why Ern had willingly walked into such a situation. Ern noticed Yuna trembling in fear beside him. Her sword at the ready, he told her not to be scared, which confused her. He assured her that he wouldn't die and asked her to stop worrying. She asked if he was claiming to be immortal. Ern replied that he wasn't exactly immortal, but he couldn't lose to those guys. He added that if he died, the world would perish. Until he found his masters, he had no intention of letting the world be destroyed. Still bewildered, Yuna asked what he was talking about. Ern explained that he had thought about it for 100 years, what he should do upon his return. At first his answer had been revenge, but he realized he also owed a debt to his masters. His purpose now was to find everything his masters had left behind in the world and restore it once done. He vowed to place the entire world beneath his feet to ensure no one could take it away again. He fell silent for a moment, remembering Mu Wang's promise to grant him power. Smiling, he reflected that his masters were con artists, creating something precious for him to protect so he wouldn't destroy the world out of vengeance. Having made peace with their intentions, he decided to follow their plan. Turning to the elders, he called them half-wits and invited them to come at him. One elder inhaled deeply and spat ghost blood poison in his direction. Recognizing the danger, Han Xiao shouted for Ern to retreat. He rushed forward to grab him, but Dobuk noticed and grabbed Han Xiao's coat from behind, throwing him back while angrily asking if he intended to throw his life away. Dobuk then turned to Arun. Realizing the poison was already too close, with no other choice, Dobuk swung his sword, releasing a massive block of ice to shield Aran. The poison spread, but Dobuk managed to protect that spot. The elder who attacked laughed, confident that his ghost blood poison was so lethal that even the blood demon would avoid it. Certain of Aran's demise, he glanced at the fake lord, hoping to leave a strong impression and secure the position of left guardian. Han Xiao collapsed to his knees in despair, unable to believe they had fallen so easily. He wondered if this was truly the end. Luna assured her grandfather that the blood demon was safe. We asked how she could be so sure. She acknowledged that the poison was lethal, even to those at the breakthrough stage. Moreover, Aran's accomplishments lagged behind the elders and he was vastly outnumbered. Despite this, her instincts screamed at her to follow Iron, declaring him their true blood demon and the savior of the blood cult. Amid the toxic poison, Aran remained calm, walking forward unscathed. He asked if his voice carrying over the hall. The elders were stunned to hear him speak. He criticized them, saying it was no wonder the blood cult was falling apart. They were stagnant, blind to the outside world while hiding in the Blood King fortress. Pointing to the elder who attacked him, he called them stagnant fools and asked if they even knew what martial artists outside were like. He mocked their ignorance, claiming they were barely on par with a large guild. Even when Han Xiao or the priestess tried to inform them of the outside world, they had refused to listen. One elder, infuriated, urged the others not to listen to Aran and to attack all at once. The elders drew their weapons and slowly approached. They launched their special attacks together, but before they could strike, Aran asked them if they knew why the blood demon is worshipped as a god. The elders suddenly froze. Unable to move, Aran stared at them, explaining that the blood demon was worshipped because they were absolute to the blood cult. The elders struggled but couldn't move an inch. Aran acknowledged that it was good to see that blood techniques had been properly passed down over the years. Han Xiao and Yuna watched in awe as the elders were mobilized like statues. Aran turned to Han Xiao and asked him who needed to be spared. Han Xiao stammered, aiming the blood sword brigade the first elder and the sixth elder. With a flick of his finger, Aran executed the remaining elders, their heads exploding into pieces. The fake lord was horrified seeing the elders slain with such ease. Aran turned to him and remarked that if he had mastered blood techniques, he shouldn't have been able to escape the influence of the blood demon, divine arts. He asked the fake lord why his head was still intact and mockingly called him a fake blood demon, enraging the fake lord even further. He round looked at the fake lord and asked if he was right in thinking that the fake lord had been mixed, a comment that pushed the fake lord to his limit. Enraged, the fake lord shouted in anger, gathering his blood into his hand and forming it into a sword. Yuna gasped, recognizing it as the blood demon's sword art, but Aran remained calm, silently staring at him. The fake lord declared that this was the third form of the blood demon, sword art. Raising his sword high, he swung it down, releasing a blood dragon that roared to life and lunged toward Iron. The dragon engulfed Iron, consuming him entirely, and Yuna screamed in horror. The fake lord shouted, triumphantly declaring that he would shred Iron into pieces and reduce him to a mere puddle of blood. But just as the fake lord mocked him, a light appeared inside the dragon's mouth. With a simple wave of his hand, Iron shattered the blood dragon into pieces, telling him he is full of crap. The fake lord stared in shock and asked him what he just said. Buriwan questioned if calls that the blood demon's sword art. Buriwan went on to explain that his master had never created anything like it. The fake lord stuttered, shouting that it was nonsense, but Buriwan calmly continued. He clarified that his master had never paired the blood demon divine art with any sword art. The fake lord was incredulous, asking if Iron was implying that his master had created the blood demon divine art. He scoffed, calling it absurd nonsense. As the founder of the blood demon sect was said to have died thousands of years ago, Irene dismissed the fake lord's claim, suggesting that some fool had likely invented the technique midway and passed it down. This enraged the fake lord further, and he dashed forward, swinging his sword while shouting at Ern to stop spouting nonsense. The fake lord's blade came crashing down, but to his surprise, Ern blocked it with a palm-sized blood shield. Unbothered, Ern said he didn't care anymore and launched blood needles at the fake lord. The fake lord jumped back in shock as the needles pierced his body. Smoke began to rise from the impact points, and he realized the needles were forged from blood demon energy. The fake lord muttered in disbelief, wondering how such needles could exist. He began to feel his blood draining and his inner power scattering. Refusing to yield, the fake lord released a surge of energy, burning away the needles embedded in his body. Yuta was stunned that he could deflect the attack. The fake lord shouted that Irene's abilities were nothing but illusions and tricks, claiming he had never heard of such techniques. He raised his blood sword, declaring himself the true blood demon. As the fake lord unleashed a massive display of power, Irene remained still, observing calmly. The fake lord unleashed the sixth form of the blood demon sword art. Blood dragon rampage. Everyone watched in shock as the fake lord sent the rampaging blood dragon hurtling toward Erwin, its fiery energy threatening to burn him alive. Iran decided to respond in kind, releasing blood from his body and calmly forming a smaller blood dragon. He sent it toward the blood dragon rampage. The fake lord laughed mockingly, calling Iran's blood dragon a pathetic worm and declaring him pitiful. As the rampaging blood dragon opened its mouth to devour Iron's dragon, Iron's creation allowed itself to be consumed. Inside the larger dragon, a powerful light suddenly erupted. The blood dragon rampage exploded, shattering into countless pieces. The room filled with smoke and dust as everyone shielded their eyes when the haze cleared. Huron and the fake lord stood facing each other, but the fake lord coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground in pain. The fake lord reflected in disbelief. He had felt the clash of their energies and was certain that Huron's level was at the extreme demon realm. Yet despite being convinced his own level was higher, he had been overpowered. Huron asked the fake lord if he was correct, in assuming that he was the youngest son of the blood cult, the brat who had suddenly appeared with the blood demon divine art and risen to become a promising heir. He expressed disbelief that people had actually elevated someone so incompetent to the position of cult leader. Huron headed that the fake lord hadn't even mastered the blood arts. Then Huron asked if the fake lord was connected to the celestial sect. The fake lord's reaction tells it all, and Huron smirked, saying that he was right. He declared that it was perfect, as he had many questions and would need the fake lord alive. The fake lord trembled with fury at Aaron's words. His fists clenched tightly and his energy erupted, cracking the ground beneath him. Grinding his teeth, he released an even stronger surge of demon power, transforming before their eyes. Shouting at Aaron not to get cocky, the fake lord's body changed, revealing his ultimate form. Yuna stuttered in fear and the others looked on. In shock she asked, her voice trembling, if the fake lord's new form could be the blood demon god. He told them it was impossible. It was reverse blood, a desperate final struggle. The fake lord then laughed loudly and shouted that he would absorb him and become the blood demon god. Yet Huron calmly replied that if he could, he should give it a try. This infuriated the fake lord even more, and he dashed toward Aaron, shouting at him to shut up. The fake lord attempted to grab Aaron's neck with his sharp claws, but Aaron stopped him by firmly holding his hands with both of his own. Iran asked the fake lord if he was correct, assuming that his plan was to overwhelm him with greater internal energy, calling him predictable. The fake lord shouted back, telling him not to be arrogant, boasting that his current energy surpassed even two hands combined. The fake lord activated his blood demon absorption technique, intending to absorb Iran's energy. He thought to himself that for over 20 years, he had been revered as the blood demon, having absorbed the blood of thousands, if not tens of thousands. He reasoned that while Iran had nullified all his previous attacks, he wouldn't be able to withstand the energy amplified by reverse blood. The fake lord smiled, convinced of his victory. Iran then asked calmly if the fake lord truly believed he couldn't withstand the amplified energy, shocking the fake lord. The fake lord wondered how Iran could speak so casually during such an intense energy battle that required complete focus. Irene explained that in a typical energy battle, the quantity of energy was critical, as it was a matter of overwhelming the opponent with sheer power. However, the blood demon absorption technique functioned differently, as it absorbed rather than burned energy. In such battles, he added, the crucial factor was not the amount of energy but how it was handled. Burn told the fake lord he would show him the proper way. Releasing his demon energy, he tightly held the fake lord's hands. Veins began to bulge and become visible on Ern's skin. The fake lord was shocked when Ern started absorbing his energy, and he screamed in pain. Yuna and Hansel watched in awe as the fake lord's once vibrant, blood-red hair gradually turned white and his body thinned. Eventually the fake lord collapsed. When he awoke, he found himself in a dark, unfamiliar place. He looked around in confusion, but soon sensed a powerful presence behind him. Turning, he saw an immense blood demon power, unlike anything he had ever encountered. Stunned and trembling in fear, the fake lord watched as the figure approached. It was Ern smiling. Burun asked if the fake lord had recognized it, and the fake lord, terrified and tearful, managed to not overwhelm. He recognized Burun as the Great One, the blood demon god, before collapsing again. Back in reality, Iron discarded the impurities from the absorbed blood, keeping only the essence. He gathered the refined power into his Danshin. This perfect alignment of energy completed the blood demon divine art, marking the pinnacle of pure blood cultivation. His people were utterly shocked. Han Xiao, trembling, reflected on the gamble they had taken. He thought that the stagnant, decaying blood cult needed change, and even though their defeat was inevitable, their sacrifice might awaken the cult to a new era. Looking down at the fallen half-blooded demon god, Han Xiao wondered whose Yuazubek truly was. The first in generations to inherit and perfect the blood demon divine art. Yet even Bak had been defeated, unable to do anything in his final moments. Bak had acknowledged the new blood demon and fallen. Hansel hesitated but eventually addressed Yuna, correcting himself by calling her priestess. He asked if she had foreseen this outcome. Smiling, she replied that the blood demon was the god of the blood cult. While Iran walked forward toward the throne, she added that Iran was a god capable of miracles and that she merely recognized the true blood demon. The elders, worried, looked up as the blood sword entered the hall. The people had gathered below and Iran gazed at them, remembering his master Muwan. He thought it was pitiful. One of the elders stepped closer. It was the first elder. Han Xiao shouted in shock, wondering if the elders still couldn't accept the truth after witnessing the entire battle. The first elder exhaled, and to everyone's surprise, shouted eternal reign to Uran as a sign of acceptance. Han Xiao was stunned. He had never expected the first elder to bow to Uran. The first elder knelt before him in respect, followed by the blood sword group and then the citizens of the demon sect. All knelt to greet and welcome their new lord. Yuan thought to himself that they were like him, burned to ashes, having lost everything. Dreaming of revenge, he guessed they had barely survived. Longing for the arrival of a new blood demon, as the disciple of his masters, he felt it was his duty to answer that longing. Tears of blood fell from his eyes and began to spread in intricate patterns across his body. Hanshil gasped, recognizing the transformation, and confirming that Iron was the lord they had so desperately yearned for. The god of the blood cult. The blood demon god. They all bowed deeply, laying their heads on the floor when they saw the image of the blood demon god emanating from him, repeatedly praising him slowly. He calmed himself and suppressed his blood demon god power. The first elder and the others continued to greet him out of respect, but he ordered them to stop descending from the throne. He remarked that he had expected this reaction. He then instructed them to stand, telling them he did not like such displays and that they should not do it again. The first elder explained that their doctrine decreed that when the true blood demon god appeared, they must lower themselves and pay reverence. Ian turned to Yunha and asked what his doctrine. She replied that it was the word delivered by the blood demon god for the blood cult to follow. In other words, what he now declared was doctrine. Baran asked the first elder if he had heard that he was not following the doctrine now. He asked pointedly, realizing his meaning. The elders stood immediately and assured him of their obedience. Suddenly Bayak moved behind him, and Dobak instinctively reached for his sword to finish him off. However, Irene told Dobak not to bother, as Bayak was as good as dead already. Looking at Bayak, Irene thought to himself that he had completely broken down. After encountering that thing, Irene then declared that he was going to hunt the Chen clan as well, prompting the first elder to ask what he meant. Riwan simply replied that he would show them. Raising two fingers, he aimed at Bayak's head. Bayak collapsed again, shocking the elders. With precision, Riwan controlled Bayak's body, forcing him upward. Bayak's fingers twisted unnaturally, breaking in multiple directions, as veins bulged grotesquely from his skin. The elders were horrified, recognizing the reverse transformation technique. Dubak asked if they were seriously saying that no one had noticed the use of this technique until now. Han Xiao questioned whether even the former blood cult leader had failed to suspect anything. Iron interjected, reminding them that Bayak was from the Chen clan. When Han Xiao tried to explain further, Irene cut him off, asking if he already knew about the martial arts that allowed Bayak to secretly alter his body. The heavenly demon technique. Han Xiao was shocked, recognizing the implications, but Irene dismissed the topic, saying they would discuss it later. He then called Yuna and she responded immediately. He asked her if the pool of 10,000 blood was still intact. Soon after, they descended into the basement, where Uran felt a surge of energy. That made his entire body feel purified. He knew that to someone outside the blood cult, the energy would feel like thick, oppressive demonic energy. Yuna halted and informed him that they had arrived. She pointed at the pool of 10,000 blood, explaining that it was where the blood of all blood cultists was collected. As he approached the pool, she elaborated that the blood cult leader would traditionally drop their blood here to hold the blessing ceremony. Upon ascension, she asked if they should prepare ceremonial attire. He dismissed the idea, stating that he had not come for such formality. When she protested, he asked her what she thought a god was, stammering. She eventually replied that the blood demon god standing before her was the true god of their world. Yuan sighed in frustration and asked if she thought he wanted that answer. He explained that he was asking what normal people thought a god was, and what made someone a god. Yuna replied that a god was a transcendent being who fulfilled human desires and led them to a glorious life. Burra nodded, agreeing, and asked why he should be called a god. He added that while he had punished others and defeated elders, such actions did not make him a god. Yuna argued that simply having control over the blood arts was enough. Burun disagreed, saying she did not yet understand what it truly meant to be a god. Approaching the pool, he told her that no one had shown her the truth. Raising a finger above the pool, he told her to watch closely. He let a single drop of his blood fall into the pool. As the blood mixed with the pool's contents, the entire chamber began to shake violently, causing panic just as suddenly as it started. The shaking ceased, leaving everyone confused. Closing his eyes, Burun felt the energy of every cultist within the Blood King's castle. He saw his people outside, waiting and hoping. When he opened his eyes, the blood in the pool swirled into a massive tornado. Yuna Shah exclaimed that she had never read about anything like this in the scriptures. Burun replied that it was, of course, impossible in his master Muwan's time. Staring at the blood tornado, he recalled Muwan explaining that the blood demon divine art he was taught was slightly different from the original. When Iran asked why, Muwan had replied that the Demon King claimed the blood demon divine art resembled the magic of a destroyed race from Gehenna. However, as it was a martial art created by the Demon King, it was meant to surpass the tricks of any extinct race. To verify the new power of the blood demon divine art, a force and entirely new ability was introduced. Knowing that the blood demon divine art was both martial art and magic, Aim touched the blood tornado and declared that if a god could punish, they must also grant grace. Otherwise they were no god. He clenched his palm, causing the tornado to explode. The resulting force spread throughout the chamber as the blood splattered and fell like rain. Yuna, looking up in disbelief, asked what was happening. Suddenly, she collapsed from the overwhelming force, shocked to feel her body grow heavy. Burun reassured her, saying that when she awoke, she would be different. She fell unconscious, overcome by dizziness. Outside, every cultist collapsed to the ground simultaneously. The next day, Han Xiao, with a bright face and rosy cheeks, approached him. He asked Han Xiao if it felt good, how it was, and if he felt rejuvenated. Han Xiao and the two elders nodded in response. They then knelt down and formally thanked him, making him sigh and remind them again that he told them to stop doing that. He noticed that everyone had become younger and physically stronger, with red eyes symbolizing the blood demon divine art. He called Dobak over and ordered him to slice his finger and show his blood. Dobak immediately complied, slicing his finger, and they were all shocked to see that his blood was purple. He explained that it was called purple blood, which surprised and amazed Dobak. When he asked Dobak if he knew what it was, Dobak admitted he didn't, but said that after fainting and waking up, he could now use nearly twice as much internal energy. He explained that the effects would vary depending on their levels. Han Xiao and the first elder were likely at the stage of purple blood as well, but Yunhao was at the next stage, black blood, which shocked her. She asked why she was at a higher level than the elders who had greater martial achievements. He replied that it was probably because she was the priestess, and right now her strength had been influenced by him. This, he added, was a new ability of the blood demon divine art. He then informed them that from now on, those who learn the blood arts and join the blood cult would gain power but become bound to him in return. He stood and told Hunch that he wanted to see how the cultists outside were doing. Hunch responded that there was a place with a great view of everything. When he looked out, he saw his people healthy, brighter, and energetic. Hunchil noted that even the starving and sick residents of the Blood King's castle had regained their vitality. He agreed, but remarked that it would only last for a little while. He then asked Han Xiao if it was true that they still lacked the funds to sustain them. Startled, Han Xiao apologized and explained that the fault lay with the guardians and elders. However, he told Han Xiao it wasn't his fault. The blame lay with Bayak and the dead elders. They would pay dearly for ruining what should have been his. Even in death, he added that the elders could have let things fall apart moderately, and asked that if it was true that they couldn't hold out. Even until the next month, Han Xiao, sweating in fear, admitted they had already sold off shares in the Gang Ho group. The guild was on the brink of disbandment, and plans to clear a few gates had been postponed due to the blood demon's appearance. Sighing in frustration, he looked up at the sky and asked Mu Wang why he had left him with such people. Han Xiao then mentioned that the most urgent issue was the lack of elders, explaining that the first elder was in charge of the Blood Sword Palace, the second elder of the Blood Gold Palace, and each palace had its role with an elder as its leader. With all the elders dead, there was no one left to fulfill those roles. He ordered Han Xiao to promote the deputy palace leaders, as they had learned under the elders and should manage just fine. However, Han Xiao pointed out that the deputy palace leaders were also loyal to the elders, and suggested that those who failed to submit to the blood demon should be made examples through execution. He dismissed this, asking why they should reduce their already small numbers. Further surprised, Han Xiao argued that it was better to uproot rebellion early. He countered, asking if Han Xiao thought anyone could stand against him, and declared it irrelevant. He ordered Han Xiao to follow his instructions, which Han Xiao respectfully acknowledged. As Han Xiao was leaving, he stopped him and told him that he was to become the cult leader. Shocked, Han Xiao asked for confirmation, and he repeated that he was appointing him the blood cult leader. Han Xiao tried to resist, knowing the weight of the position. He explained that the cult leader wasn't the blood demon, it was just that no one capable of fulfilling the blood demon's role had appeared before. It was natural to separate the roles of God and leader. He added that even though the Ganga group was collapsing, Han Xiao had managed to sustain it for decades, and he cared deeply for the blood cult. This made him the right choice to lead, as he understood both the outside world and the Blood King's castle well. He looked at the first and third elders, who silently agreed, calling Han Xiao. He formally announced that from that day forward, Han Xiao was the blood cult leader. Though stunned, Han Xiao composed himself, knelt and accepted the promotion, swearing to deliver results worthy of the responsibility. He bent down, told Han Xiao he was already sounding like a proper cult leader, and then asked what his plans were. Given the Blood King's castle had no source of income, this was the first fear Han Xiao felt as a leader. He looked to the two elders, asking if they had any ideas. They were shocked but remained silent. Fortunately, Yunhao appeared and suggested leaving it to her. She explained that while she didn't know the Blood King's castle as well as Han Xiao's grandfather, she understood the outside world better than anyone in the blood cult. She had also been helping manage the Gangha group. She asked for a week to solve the urgent problems. Though skeptical, he knew she had managed a guild larger than his, so he agreed, giving her full authority to fix it. A week later, Yuna came to his room to report. He allowed her in and asked how it went. She replied that she had sold the shares and assets of the Gangha group. Shocking him, he asked her to repeat what she just said. When she confirmed that she sold the shares and assets, he asked if it was really necessary. She replied that the Gangha group had already fulfilled its role. She explained that they had sealed off the entrance to the Blood King's castle and devised a way to maintain their identities. Since a significant portion of the shares had already been sold, continuing to grow the Gangha group would only benefit others, and over time it would become harder to get a fair price for it. Thus she liquidated it. Surprised by her explanation, he told her he had made the right choice in trusting her with the task, and praised her, to which she expressed her gratitude. She also mentioned that she had disposed of the Gangha Guild, the Nangho Guild as well. When he asked why she had even dissolved the guilds, she reminded him of the time Dobuk had come to the villa and told him that their guild had been exposed to the volcano group. This jogged his memory about the volcano group, though he knew it wasn't the right time to confront them. The reason he had been able to take over the Blood King's castle so easily was the connection between the Blood Demon Divine Arts and the Blood Cultists. Fighting the volcano group now would risk destroying everything he had worked so hard to secure. She then suggested that it would be better to start a new guild. When he asked what she meant, she explained her plan to create a completely new guild with a fresh identity starting from scratch. She acknowledged that with so many established factions, it would be nearly impossible and reckless, but she argued that their blood cult wasn't what it used to be. He agreed that they had improved somewhat, but pointed out that they were still struggling just to survive. This caused her to collapse to the floor in frustration, asking if that was really the case. He explained that the blood cult lacked experience. Dealing with people and handling monsters in the gates were entirely different challenges. She agreed with him, feeling disheartened. But he reassured her not to worry too much, as they would gain experience and there was a way to grow stronger. When she asked what that way was, he replied that he would tell her in time. He then asked if she had decided on a guild name. She said yes and told him she planned to name it King God, General Emperor, Majesty Iron Guild. He immediately ordered her to drop it and forget about it, which saddened her. He then told her the guild would be named Manhwa Guild. Shocked, she asked why it would carry her name. He simply replied that it was because she would be the guild leader. Her surprise grew and she protested, insisting that he should be the leader. He told her that she was being foolish and asked if she had forgotten who he was. Since he couldn't operate on the surface, she was the best choice for guild leader. Her identity and face were still completely hidden. He added that the Volcano Guild likely hadn't given up on tracking him yet. Days later in Namyeonju at a D-rank gate, zombies were launching forward to attack, when a man managed to sever its fingers. As a giant zombie approached, he stabbed it in the chest and reported that the hunt was complete. However, the giant zombie came back to life, pulling the sword from its chest. Shocked, the man asked why it hadn't died when he stabbed its heart. Fortunately, Yunho appeared, moving at incredible speed, and slashed the giant zombie into pieces. She threw a holy enchantment to the man, and told him that undead creatures wouldn't die unless weapons were coated with holy enchantment. The man caught it and responded that he understood. Another man reported to her that the area was clear. She praised their good work and ordered them to begin. They placed their hands on the ground near the zombie corpses. As she watched, she remembered Iron teaching her the blood demon absorption art. She had been shocked at the time and asked how it was possible. He explained that it wouldn't have been feasible before, but now it was because they were connected to him. The cultists, who were also members of the Undead Guild, successfully used the absorption technique to draw the blood from the zombies. Later at the underground bar in Pyongyang, Demon customers were talking about a guild in Namyeonju that was making waves recently. One mentioned that they were called the Undead Guild, and that rumors suggested they were successors of the Jun Jingyo. Others were discussing how Xing and Wu from the Volcano Guild was mobilizing, and wondered what was happening. Iran walked to the counter, where Hoshiak noticed and recognized him pouring a drink. Hoshiak commented that, if this was about holding a grudge over their last request, they shouldn't get involved. He asked if Iran didn't understand that the nature of their work in a place like this often led to such situations. He then offered the drink to Iron, who took it and drank. Hoshiak asked if Iron had joined the cult, noting that Black City maintained close ties with the Blood Cult. If he were a cultist, it probably wasn't a personal matter. Iron replied that it was true. Curious, Hoshiak asked what brought him there. Iron responded that he was there for the Darknet's access rights. Hoshiak told him he wouldn't have the authority to make that kind of request. Iron then threw a symbol mark onto the counter. Shocked, Hoshiak recognized what it was and asked in disbelief if Iron was a Grand Elder. Iron asked if it wasn't obvious. Hoshiak admitted he didn't understand how that could be, but added that such a request would require a hefty price. Irene calmly told Hoshiak he had some information for him. Nervously, Hoshiak asked what information he was referring to. Burram replied that the blood demon of this generation was being replaced. Hoshiak asked him what he meant by the replacement of the blood demon. Hoshiak couldn't believe it and shouted that it was impossible, but Hearn simply asked him why he thought it was impossible, and told him that he spoke as if he knew a lot about the Blood King's palace. A sharp piece of blood then appeared near Hoshiak's neck. Horrifying, Imran told Hoshiak they seemed to know a lot about the Blood King's palace, but he didn't know about the replacement of the blood demon, which meant there was a rat in the Blood King's palace yet. Hoshiak just asked him if he even realized what he was doing, but Iran asked him back if he was one of the elders or a member of the blood sect. Hoshiak simply warned him not to do something he would regret while reaching for the sword hidden under the counter. Iran then felt the gaze of the men behind him and heard Hoshiak grab the sword. He released the spiked blade he had aimed at Hoshiak, while saying that it didn't matter now, and asked about the authority over the Darknet. Hoshiak replied that he couldn't grant authority over the Darknet from his position, and that he had to report it to the higher-ups to get permission. Irwin told Hoshiak that he already knew that much, but what he was saying was that he had to meet him, the Black King, which shocked Hoshiak and everyone inside the bar. Hoshiak and the others then aimed their swords at him, warning that he was crossing the line. Hoshiak furiously asked if he really thought he could say that name here and survive. But Iran simply asked him back if he was just overreacting because of his name. Hoshiak told him that it seemed becoming an elder was a lie, even that he didn't know anything, and if that was the case it meant he was not from the blood sect. Hoshiak then asked him what his purpose was, piercing the tip of the sword into his neck while warning him that if he spoke the truth, he would let him go without pain. Yet Iran simply said blood. Hashiak was confused. He then looked at his sword and saw blood crawling along it. Iran watched it spread and told Hashiak the blood is flowing. Eventually the blood crawled onto Hashiak's hand and spread inside his body at an alarming speed. Hashiak gasped in pain, worrying his men. Irene explained to Hashiak that the blood of the True Blood sect was immune to all poison, which meant that poison dissolved in whiskey was meaningless. However, the same poison, when introduced into blood immune to all toxins, could become a fatal and deadly poison. He then watched Haswiak struggle and tremble in pain. Haswiak's men furiously aimed their swords closer to Around, but he simply told Haswiak not to worry because he wouldn't kill him. He also stated that he didn't want to damage the relationship between the Blood Sect and the Black King. He then asked Hashiak if he was right in believing that he should be qualified to meet the Black King, but still Hashiak disagreed. Haran released his blood onto the floor while asking Haswiak if he was correct in saying that the former blood demon had saved the Black King's life. He then released a swarm of blood spikes from the blood on the floor and told Haswiak that in order to repay the favor, the Black King had been helping the Blood Sect ever since. The blood spikes surrounded the men behind him. He glanced back at them and told them that he was the new blood demon of the Blood Sect, shocking Hashiak even more. However, Hashiak still couldn't believe it and thought it was ridiculous. Suddenly a man's voice spoke, stating that if that was the case, then he was fully qualified. The statement surprised Hashiak, who then asked the Black King if he had been watching everything. Haswiak was stunned in shock upon hearing the Black King speak himself. Ayin then reabsorbed his blood and removed the poison from Haswiak's body. He then ordered Haswiak to guide him to the Black King. A moment later they arrived at the party bar, where people were dancing inside. Iron followed Haswiak, complaining that it was noisy, but Haswiak remained quiet, wondering if Iron wasn't nervous. After all, he was the blood demon. But to the Black King, who ruled the darkness across the entire Asian continent, he was nothing more than the ruler of a collapsing world. Yet Hashiak wondered why the Black King wanted to meet him personally. They eventually arrived at the VIP room, guarded by two massive men. One of the guards stopped them and told Hashiak that he couldn't go any further. Hashiak looked back at Iran and told him that this was as far as he would go. He then walked past Iran, wishing him good luck. Once Hashiak was gone, the two guards nodded at each other before one of them scanned a card. Unlocking the gate, the guard then told Around to follow him, which he did. As he walked upstairs, he noticed how skilled the guard was. It was a shame he was just a gatekeeper here. He then glanced back at the people inside the club, realizing that most of them were high rankers of the Black Sect. As they reached the top, the guard stopped walking and told him that this was it. Iram continued past another set of stairs, walking past the guard's station on each step. He eventually reached the top, and when he touched the door, it suddenly vanished, transporting him inside a house. He looked around and saw a man seated on the sofa. The man casually explained that he didn't mean to surprise him, and that since he was a somewhat important figure there, security was tight. The man then welcomed him, but Iram remained silent. The man then introduced himself that he is the master of that place, the Black King. The Black King then offered him a seat, which he accepted and sat down with his feet crossed. The Black King then asked him if he would like a glass and told him that it was quite a decent drink, but he replied no and explained that even if he drank, he wouldn't get drunk, but thanked him for the offer, to which the Black King replied that he understood and snapped his fingers, making the bottle of alcohol disappear instantly. The Black King then asked him the reason he wanted to meet him, but he simply asked if he was right that he kept dating the Blood Cult. The Black King replied that the world of grace cherishes kindness. He asked the Black King what nonsense he was talking about, and told him that there must be another purpose behind it, which made the Black King smirk. The Black King then explained to him that the information about the replacement of the Blood Demon was quite valuable because it filled in many of the strange gaps, and now the puzzle was complete. The Black King then asked him if the one leading the Blood Cult now was Kang Han Chil, but he just asked him back if there were still more rats left. The Black King replied that there was no way, and asked him if he was right that Elder O had died, making him realize that O was the rat. The Black King then laughed and told him that they should just call themselves friends, exchanging necessary information. And although O was a fool who lagged behind in the changing flow of time, allowing someone like Han Xiao to lead the Blood Cult, unlike those idiots, was a proper decision, because thanks to it they were expanding their influence by establishing the Galaxy Guild under Yuna's lead. The Black King then stared at him and asked him if it meant the Blood Demon and the Blood Cult leader co-existed, but he just replied who knows, and asked if it wasn't the principle of the black market that information comes at a cost, to which the Black King replied that it was correct, but he had far too many questions for him and called him Mr. Li Iram, which pissed him off. The Black King then told him that Shin Hong of the Volcano Guild's raid team had died at the monster carcass disposal site, and Shin Hong went there after hearing that a slave he cared about had died. He added that on that day, A large hole was found in the ceiling of the disposal site, and most of the volcano slaves had reportedly escaped. Meanwhile, someone came to the black market branch, mentioned an incident from 5 years ago, and accepted a request. But coincidentally, the slave Shin Hong cared about had also been enslaved 5 years ago. The Black King then asked him if he thought all of it was just a coincidence, but he simply replied that he didn't believe in coincidences or fate, which confused the Black King. He then glared at the Black King while releasing a bit of his aura and told him that he created the future he desired with his own hands, which surprised the Black King. The Black King then realized that he deliberately left clues about himself and told him that he was far more interesting than he thought. He then told the Black King that thanks to him, he had made it that far, and that it was still a bit burdensome for him to track him down, personally making the Black King ask if he meant for now, and then bursting out laughing. The Black King then shouted that it was excellent, and that it seemed like it would be a great deal. The Black King then told him to speak, and asked him what he wanted. After their talk, the Black King appeared in someone's office and fixed himself before the gate opened. The Black King then walked inside quietly and kneeled down. While reporting that he had returned, he then called a lady looking out of a window his master. She asked him how it went, and he replied that he thought he understood why she was so interested, and noticed that Iran was an extraordinary human. But how a former player created a core, gained the power of a martial artist, and became the blood demon was still unknown. Moreover, even Iran's background couldn't be read, making him wonder if Iran could truly be the legendary blood demon god. She then told him that at first she thought it might be the work of the Volcano Guild, but the Volcano Guild hadn't even identified Iran's existence, nor achieved the feat of creating a core for players. She then tightly gripped her hand and shook, making the Black King ask her what she saw. She trembled in fear while telling him that it was impossible that Iran was a human, because he was a monster, plain and simple. She then ordered him to grant Iran everything he desired so that Iran could move personally, to which the Black King replied that he understood. The lady then looked at herself in the window glass, thinking that at last he had arrived. Meanwhile, in Han Chiel's villa in Nemanju, he was in his room training his skills, realizing that his move was a bit risky. He was curious since it was a group with little known about its strengths, but he didn't expect it to be to that extent. He knew that the Black King was beyond what he could handle right now. However, the visit confirmed that a group of that caliber wouldn't assist the blood cult without a reason. He then remembered that Yanwu had told him that the Heavenly Demon Sect and the Blood Demon Sect were important. There had been a group covertly aiding the blood cult since the past, which was the Halmoon. The next day, Yuna was stunned and open-mouthed in shock, but he simply asked the Black King in front of them why he was there. The Black King smilingly replied that the investment had been decided, making him even more confused. The Black King then pointed at Yuna while telling him that the blood sect sought transformation, then pointed at him while saying that a new blood demon had appeared. As an investor, one must naturally invest in ventures with high growth potential. The Black King then approached Yuna to give his card to her. He then apologized for the late introduction and introduced himself as Hasa Men. She accepted the card while thanking Men and rushed to Uran. She then whispered to him that the investment terms were unbelievably favorable. She got even closer and whispered that they were so good that it was almost suspicious, so she had reviewed the investment contract multiple times, but there was no problem at all. At that level, even without selling Gang Ho Group, it was more than sufficient. He agreed with her and told her to just back off a little. He then approached Men and asked if they could talk separately for a moment, which Men immediately agreed to. A minute later, when they were in a separate room, he closed the door tightly and faced Men, who was still smiling. He then seriously asked him what his real agenda was, making Men ask him back what he meant by agenda, and responding that he was merely exploring possibilities as an investor. But Aaron told Men that was not what he meant, and asked him what he meant by saying he was joining the Galactic Guild. Men simply told him that he thought he would already know that Aaron was someone with many secrets, and that they of Black City were very curious about those secrets. He added that he just wanted to confirm them for himself up close. Min was surprised and confused when Ron asked if he was sure it wasn't something ordered by his superiors. Min's reaction changed immediately, and he seriously told him that he was not sure what he meant when he was called the Black City King. Iran noticed Min's reaction and laughingly explained that if there was a Black City King, he figured there might also be a Black City Emperor. Min seriously told him that he was not very good with jokes, but Uriwan simply asked Min if it was really okay for someone called a king to wander around like that. Min proudly replied that a well-organized group operates just fine, even without its leader present. Uriwan told Min that he envied it, but Min told him not to worry because the blood sect would function the same way since he had personally stepped in. Min then added that the authority for the Darknet had already been granted, as well, which surprised Iran. He asked Min what authority he was referring to when he hadn't received anything. Min told him that the Darknet wasn't a mere object and explained that it was the secret meeting place where all the world's information converges, and that the authority referred to the right to participate there. However, since it would be burdensome for him to reveal himself directly, Min would act as his proxy for the time being. Upon hearing Min's offer, Briwan asked him what about the thing he had been searching for, and Min replied that he was just about to tell him that he had found the magic user. Duran knew that the magic user was Bendino and remembered Bendino telling him that he was like him, making him naturally think that Bendino would be dead. Min then typed something into his phone while telling him that there was a problem. He then gave the phone to Iran and told him that Bendino's dungeon, Armo's location, had been exposed, which surprised him. Min then told him that it was in Ganghwa Island, within the sphere of influence of the Hanam Guild. The next day, in Armo's dungeon, an elder shouted for everyone to gather around. He then introduced himself as Yuxago, an elder of the Hanam faction. The others were excited to see Sago. Knowing that he was the swift sower, they then respectfully greeted him, saying that if someone like him stepped in, things would become much easier. However, a player was pissed upon seeing Sago, and the man asked how annoying the elder would turn out to be. But then the man was shocked when Sago appeared next to him. The man broke into a cold sweat in fear and tried to explain in a stuttering voice while wondering how long Sago had been listening. But then Sago punched him in the stomach, causing the man to cough up blood and kneel on the ground, holding his stomach in pain. Sago then called the man a maggot and took his sword out while telling the man that his head was filled with demonic energy. Sago then pointed the sword at the man's head and told him that he would personally extract that demonic energy from his head, making the man beg Sago to forgive him. But Sago just raised his sword to kill the man. Fortunately, someone covered the man from Sago and shouted for him to stop. Sago asked the player if the man in front of him was one of their guild members and if he was the guild master of Jiadong, King Cholwu. Yet Sago told them that even if Cholwu was a member of their guild, he couldn't stop because it was his duty as a righteous martial artist to eradicate demonic energy. Cholwu told Sago that the man was not demonic and that he would vouch for him, making Sago angrier and asking Cholwu if he was saying he was wrong. Yet Cholwu swore that he would prove it in the dungeon, which surprised Sago but calmed him down. Sago then put his sword back and told Xiaowu that if he was willing to go that far, he would trust him and watch closely. Sago then walked away, shouting to everyone that they would be entering soon, so they should finish their preparations quickly. Cholwu then reached for the man's hand and explained to his members that to them, players like them were nothing but dogs, because unlike them, who grew stronger through training and enlightenment, players only grew stronger by killing monsters, so they saw the players as despicable beings. Xiaowu then warned the man that if he couldn't bite, he shouldn't bark, because that was the only way to survive and grow old as a mutt. The man trembled and remained silent for a moment before finally accepting Xiaowu's hand and agreeing with him. Xiaowu then called out to the other team next to them and asked if he was right in assuming they were from the Shadow Guild, to which the guildmaster replied yes. Cholwu told the guildmaster of the Shadow Guild that he had never heard of them, so they must be a new guild and should be careful if they wanted to survive long in that field. The guildmaster smiled upon hearing it, and Iron replied that he understood while releasing a sharp blood spike behind him, ready to kill Sago at any time. A day before, Min told him that the key to Armo was in Hinam's possession and that he had tried to handle it himself, but it seemed they had already formed a subjugation squad. Min then explained to him that there were two ways to approach it. One was to disguise themselves as the Ghost Guild of Hawks and join the subjugation squad, and the other was to steal the key. Min added that if it was Hawks, it was not an impossible task, so he should just say the word, and he would order the subordinates to retrieve the key. Min then asked him what he would choose to do, making him pissed and asking Min back if he was testing him. He then told Min that he knew if he were to make such a request, he would surely demand a price worthy of it, and told Min that he had no intention of owing him a debt over something of that level. He then warned Min not to dare try to test him, making Min smile and ask him if he was right in knowing what it meant to take an investment from them. Min then stood up, telling him that they would proceed with the first method, and that he should prepare the followers who would join the subjugation squad. Min then walked past him and wished him good fortune before leaving the room, leaving him pissed, thinking that Min wouldn't be able to keep that attitude forever and that the one who needed to be tested was not him, but Min. Back at the armored dungeon, Sepul swiftly swung his sword forward, striking the huge wall in front of them and shattering it into pieces. The others then praised Seagull for being impressive because he had cut down the massive wall, making Seagull laugh and replied that at the very least, it was what was expected of an elder of Hanam. Sackle then glared at the players and asked them what they were all standing around for. He then ordered them to move ahead quickly, to which Chilwu replied yes, and that they would proceed immediately. Chilwu then told his team that they should head to the Jiadong Guild. The players then started walking forward while Sackle called them worthless fools. Chilwu then told his team that as they had heard, they were the scouting party, so they should prioritize investigating the interior of the dungeon and report any anomalies, to which they all replied that they understood. Chilwu warned them to be cautious of magical traps as they proceeded, since it was a dungeon created by magicians, but he was unaware that one of his men was about to step on a trap. When he noticed it was too late and the man stepped on it. Chiwu shouted for the man to look out and rushed toward him, but the place where the man was standing exploded, triggering other traps in the floor as well. Fortunately, Chiwu managed to drag the man away. Chiwu then called out to the man, Minho, in worry, and asked if he was alright. Minho was injured, but he still apologized to Cholwu, making Cholwu ask him what he was apologizing for and telling him to drink the potion immediately. Cholwu then walked to the front and was relieved that there were no severe injuries, but then Sego appeared, saying that he couldn't believe they couldn't even avoid it and called them pathetic fools. Sagal then told them that there was no time to whine and ordered them to move to the next area at once, but Xiaowu responded that, if they proceeded without treating the injured, it would only cause further delays and begged Sagal to allow a brief moment for treatment. However, Seagull told Chiwu that, if they hadn't triggered the trap in the first place, it wouldn't have happened, and warned him that this time he would give him one chance, but there wouldn't be a next time, to which Chiwu agreed and thanked Seagull for it. Seagull then turned around and walked away, while shouting that they would take a short break, regroup and recover. Xiaowu then looked around and noticed and Jisoo next to him. He was shocked that they didn't have a single scratch on them, and more than that they were spotless without even a speck of dust, making Xiaowu wonder if they were equipped with some extraordinary item, and think about how expensive such items must be. Jisoo used telepathy to ask if he should cut Xiaowu down because he kept staring at his face, but Aran angrily told Jisoo not to overdo it and explained that Bandino was no ordinary opponent, which meant breaking through that dungeon wouldn't be easy. He added that if an opportunity arose, he would speak, but until then Jisoo should avoid drawing attention. To which Jisoo replied that he understood. Suddenly a lady rushed to them, calling out to Xiaowu and reporting that it seemed they had found the exit. Xiaowu told her that it was perfect timing and that the regrouping was nearly complete, but then the lady told him that there was a problem, which confused Xiaowu. A moment later, they arrived at the exit and saw a sacrificial magic circle in front of it. Xiaowu told them that the correct course of action would be to retreat, for now bring in technicians and deactivate it. Before proceeding, however, Sol just told them to step aside and took out his sword, activating his Blue Wave sword ultimate technique, Great Blue Wave. He released it toward the magic circle. His power struck the magic circle perfectly, and he confidently told them that destroying and moving past a mere magic trap should be enough. They then waited for the smoke to clear, but when it did, Sego was shocked to see that the magic circle was still intact. Sekal couldn't believe that it didn't even have a scratch and wondered if it was truly a sacrificial magic circle. He knew it was strange for something like that to appear there, far from the Western lands. But then he remembered his sect leader telling him that he looked forward to good news, making Sagal think that he couldn't face his sect leader if they were to retreat like that. Chiel-Woo suggested to Sagal that they withdraw for now, but Sagal simply responded that if it was a sacrificial magic circle, they should just offer a sacrifice, which shocked Chiel-Woo and made him think that the insane old man was really going through with it. Sagal then told them that he would give him the chance to die honorably. Chiu reminded Sagal that their mission was reconnaissance, so there was no reason for meaningless sacrifices. However, Sagal just shouted at Chiu to shut up and asked if he had any guarantee that those sorcerers would stay trapped inside forever. He questioned what would happen if they escaped and harmed their comrades elsewhere, and if he believed that powerless fools like them could stop those sorcerers, which left them all in shock. Seagull then aimed his sword at them and told Xiao Wu that if he still claimed he was wrong, he would consider him one of the sorcerers and kill him himself. Seagull then asked Xiao Wu if he hadn't said he would prove he was not one of them and ordered him to choose who would be the sacrifice. Xiao Wu clenched his teeth in anger, thinking that he had always lived as a player, ready to face death at any moment. However, dying because of those trash's greed felt like a meaningless death. Xiao Wu then wondered if it was a death that suited someone like him. Someone who had chosen to live as a stray dog. He then replied that he couldn't choose, but then Iran asked Xiu something using telepathy. Xiu peeked back at him, recognizing his voice and confirming that it was indeed him, making Xiu wonder if he was really using telepathy right now, and how a player could use a martial artist's technique. Sako laughed and told Xiu Wu that he understood that he couldn't bring himself to send his guild member, so he would send someone else instead. Xiu Wu replied that it wasn't what he meant, but Around told him to do as he said and assured him that he wouldn't resent him for offering him as a sacrifice if he wanted to survive. He should just follow his instructions. This made Xiao Wu wonder what was going on. Why was Erwin volunteering? Did Erwin not care about his life? Sako firmly ordered Xiao Wu to stop hesitating and make a choice already. He then told Xiao Wu that if he wanted to die, he should just keep standing there like that. Xiao Wu gripped his hand tightly, knowing there was no way he wanted to die. He then told Sagal that he would offer the Dark Shadow Guild, to which Sagal agreed. Jisoo was pissed upon hearing this, and through telepathy asked, "How dare Xiao Wu point his chin at the great and noble blood demon?" Jisoo then asked Around to allow him to crush Seagal's jaw, but Around simply told Jisoo to read the room. Baran then walked forward and his team followed, walking past Chiwu's team, who couldn't look at them out of shame. They entered the magic circle and stood in the middle in silence. Chiwu was shocked when the magic circle didn't activate and wondered why. Sago then realized that if the sacrificial magic circle was strong enough to block his ultimate technique, 10 sacrifices wouldn't be enough. That must have meant that the mages inside were that powerful and that even more sacrifices would be necessary. Sago then ordered Xiaowu to choose the next person to be sacrificed. Xiaowu wanted to tell Seagull not to act righteous when he was nothing but trash, but he couldn't. Instead, he kept his mouth shut. Then he heard Iran telling him to add more. But instead of offering someone to die, he should choose someone to save. This left Xiaowu even more confused. What kind of nonsense was that? Iram then said that judging by his dumb expression, he didn't get it and repeated that he should offer someone to save as a sacrifice. Chiwu wondered if he was supposed to believe that. Yet even if he didn't believe him, there was no other way to resolve the situation. Sadun then shouted at Chiwu, saying there was no time and that he needed to choose the next sacrifice quickly. Xiaowu knew that even if he survived without becoming a sacrifice, those trash would definitely kill whoever was left. They wouldn't want the rumor of clearing the dungeon by sacrificing players to spread, so it was better to take the chance to live, no matter how slim, than to die miserably by their hands. He then called Kim Minho to go up, which surprised Minho. His teammates shouted at Xiaowu that it wasn't right and that they should go instead because Minho had just graduated high school. He was just a kid, but Xiaowu just shouted at his team to shut up, gripping his hand so tightly that it bled. He then explained to them that there would be no changes and ordered Minho to go. Minho sadly told everyone that Chiwu's decision was correct because he had always been a burden and useless. He was relieved that he could finally repay the guild in some way. Minho then bowed to Chiwu and thanked him for everything before walking closer to the magic circle. With a shaking body, Minho stepped into the magic circle, but it didn't activate. This made Minho's team feel somewhat relieved, but then they realized that in the end, someone still had to sacrifice themselves. Settle then shouted at Chiwu, demanding to know why he was just standing there, and ordered him to keep offering sacrifices until the magic circle activated. A moment later, almost everyone was inside the magic circle. Chiwu noticed that everyone except him and their leader Taeyang had stepped onto the formation, but it still hadn't activated. Chiwu was horrified because he had never heard of a sacrificial magic circle of that scale. How could such a thing exist in such a small dungeon? He then looked around, wondering what he had done to the magic circle. Could someone like him, a player, really pull this off? If Around truly had that kind of power, Chiwu thought he might actually survive. Around then told Chiwu that there was only one more left. This was his last chance to survive. He then asked Chiwu if he would die or alive. Chiwu knew that saying he didn't want to live would be a lie. Up until now he had played the dog, flattering those disgusting bastards just to survive, but he couldn't sacrifice others just so he could live. Chiwu then bowed to his leader, Yang, and apologized before telling him to become the sacrifice. Yang ordered Xiaowu to raise his head and told him that he had wanted to be the sacrifice all along, but Xiaowu had never called his name until now. However, Yang was curious. Why was someone like Xiaowu, who always cared deeply for his guild members, making that choice now? But Xiaowu remained quiet. Yang then held Xiaowu's shoulder softly and told him that he must have his reasons, so he should make sure to survive. Xiaowu then watched as Yang walked toward the magic circle, thinking that he would always be remembered as the despicable man who sacrificed his comrades to survive. But it didn't matter to him, because if he could save everyone, none of it mattered. Even though he had lived as a player, acting like the dog of martial artist just to get this far, in the end, he wouldn't die. At Dog Iron Man acted surprised, confusing Xiaowu. He then said that it seemed the sacrifices were still insufficient. Using telepathy again, he told Xiaowu that there was still one more, but he was curious about what choice he would make in the end. This made Xiaowu smile and call him a bastard. Saddle then told Xiaowu that it was finally his turn and that he would never forget their sacrifices, but Xiaowu simply walked toward the magic circle and told Saddle that he was spewing nonsense, jocking Saddle and his team. One of Saddle's men was about to draw his sword, but Saddle told him to leave Xiaowu alone. He was as good as dead anyway. Ran then told Xiaowu to come on out. Xiaowu asked him if he was sure everyone there would survive. Minho and Yang overheard him, but Erwan simply replied that they would see soon enough. The magic circle then activated. Saddle told his team to brace themselves, but then another magic circle appeared beneath Saddle and his team. Saddle panicked and asked what was happening. Then the magic circle in Saddle's direction exploded, leaving Xiaowu's team and Around's team safe and sound. Xiaowu was shocked even more, but he calmly told them to watch closely, because this was the fate of those who forced others to sacrifice themselves. The ceiling collapses due to the powerful explosion from the magic circle while they remain inside the safe magic circle. As they wait, he tells Xiaowu that the magic circle had been like that from the beginning, and that if a sacrifice is offered, the passage explodes. Xiaowu asks how he knows this, but he simply replies that he just knows a lot of things. Sho then comments that's a relief, and that luckily, the number of sacrifices matched the number of players, because if it hadn't he might have ended up in there too. However, he is shocked when he is told that originally, only one sacrifice was required. He then explains that while he cannot destroy or create a new magic circle, yet modifying one is easy. Wu finds it hard to believe that a martial artist can modify a magic circle just by transmitting their aura, and wonders if a player can do the same. He then asks just who in the world he is, but before he can answer, Sego slashes the stones above him, completely shattering them into pieces. Sego then furiously calls them insolent wretches and releases a powerful slash in their direction. As the slash nears him, Jisoo immediately moves forward and counters Sego's attack. Furious, Jisoo asks Sagal how he dares to target such an esteemed presence and releases a strong aura. Sagal notices that it is inner power and asks if they are martial artists. He and his members then aim their swords at them, questioning whether they think they can survive after making an enemy of Hunam and infiltrating the subjugation squad to harm them while hiding their identity. As Urim expected, Segal's sword was something else, and thanks to it those around said will survive. He then aims his hand in Segal's direction, thinking they should see if they can withstand his attack too. However, Jisoo suddenly asks if they can grant them an opportunity. Jisoo is about to ask how they dare attack the Blood Demon King when he is interrupted. He calls Jisoo a guild member and uses telepathy to ask if he plans to reveal his entire identity. Jisoo is stunned in fear upon sensing his presence and corrects himself, realizing he cannot allow it because they dared to harm his esteemed presence as the guildmaster. Lowering his hand in agreement, he tells Jisoo to proceed, adding that they seem like fitting opponents for him. Jisoo thanks him for the opportunity, knowing that on the day of the Blood Demon's arrival, due to his ignorance he committed the unforgivable sin of failing to recognize the true Blood Demon and even pointing his sword at him. This was his chance to atone for his sins, even just a little. Jisoo then steps forward and calls upon his Shadow Guild, instructing them to eliminate the enemies of their guild member and not to display disgraceful behavior. They all respond in understanding. Sagdal, enraged by Jisoo's words, demands how they dare forget who he is. He shouts that he is Elder Yuk Sagdal of the Great Haenam and swings his sword forward, but Jisoo easily blocks it, shocking and confusing Sagdal. Jisoo then tells Segal that his sins must be cleansed with his blood. The Shadow Guild members then launch themselves at Seagal's men, and both sides engage in battle while they're on Cheolwoo and Cheolwoo's team watch. Cheolwoo asks whether they should help, but he simply asks Cheolwoo what he means by help, and whom they should assist. Cheolwoo is about to respond but stops when he sees that the Shadow Guild members have the advantage. None of them can believe they are overpowering the warriors of Haenan, and even Sego himself is struggling. Meanwhile, as Seko fights Jisoo, he wonders what kind of bizarre swordsmanship this is. He then tells Cheolwoo that he needs experience points, prompting Cheolwoo to ask what he means by that. He simply replies that the Shadow Guild needs to understand how modern martial artists fight. On the other hand, Jisoo senses something ominous. He knows that Sagal is clearly at a disadvantage, but he wonders why the atmosphere feels strangely calm. Suddenly Sagal dodges Jisoo's attack and asks if he is from one of the stray sects, remarking that he is lacking, meaning he must not have been practicing for long. In response, Jisoo releases a powerful slash, which Sagal blocks, but the force pushes him backward. Still, Sagal remains composed, raises his sword, and tells Jisoo that he will show him the true sword of Haenam. Jisoo is shocked by Sagal's power and immediately leaps forward. Noticing that Sagal's stance has changed, he intends to end the fight immediately. Jisoo launches his sword at Sagal, but Sagal easily blocks it, surprising him as he was sure he had aimed for an opening. Sagal then activates his skill, haste, and speeds behind Jisoo before he can even notice.